Thank you very much. I think I have it on my computer, so I'll be all fine.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
I can't have it.
He just asked me if I had it.
That's my boss. I'm getting excited.
No.
We can, is it, it's on the machine here, right? Because I did it in. No.
I can email it to you.
Email it to me.
Hey, Mr. Parks.
The ones that are addressed in the board. They're just, so usually Hayden and he would used to sit on the front row. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So next time we'll just investigate it.
Jared, I just sent that to you.
Okay. And Linda just got about.
I got it.
Okay. I'll forward you Travis's too, just in case.
I just need to grab another adapter.
No. I don't know yet. Okay. Actually, can I give you my email and then could you also email it to me as well? Yeah. Okay, thanks.
That's one of those things that we can talk about. That's one of the areas that we can just address. Does that make sense? I'm not even gonna get out my thingy my laptop. Hey, how are you? Good, you? Good.
Still on, Krista? Okay, I'm going to switch to the screen share so you don't have to look at me, okay?
Get one off.
No, you're right. You're not here.
Musical chairs. It's all right.
Hey, guys.
So are we live? We are live. All right. Welcome, everybody, to our school board meeting this evening. I need to call this to order, and I need a motion to go into the standard school board meeting.
So moved.
So moved.
Second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Aye passes. If we can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First thing is we need to have a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve tonight's agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes passes. The next thing we need to do is we need to have a motion to approve the consent agenda, items A, B, and C, as identified on the agenda.
So move.
Make that approval. Joel approves it.
I second that.
Dave Bennett seconds that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Consent agenda passes. All right, next thing on here is we have our presentations. We're moving right down the road today. So, what we have first on our presentations, Ryan, you want to take this?
Sure. Chairman Peterson, members of the board, I think we're going to hear from the transportation first. So Travis, come on down. Mr. Travis Fackrell, Director of Transportation.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Travis Fackrell, Transportation Director. Try to make this as short and sweet as possible so we can move on and not get too bored with all the data that comes with this. Right off the bat, we'll go over some accomplishments from last year. Daily average was 1,259 students. We get that information from a snapshot from the state that we take every year, so it's state data. It's pretty accurate. That's a mixture of elementary and secondary routes, AM, PM, middle day shuttles, and so we transport quite a bit of students throughout the day. During the summer, we did 49,320 meals. I was really astounded by that number. I had to call and verify that that was correct, and she assured me that was the right number. You know, that's a lot of work and time that goes into that, and we really appreciate food service and everything that everybody does for that. We replaced 2 buses you board approved purchasing last year. They are here. They're getting ready to be put into service, so you should see some shiny new ones going down the street. Along with that, we purchased a new facilities work van that was approved, replaced an old aging van that just needed constant work and it was in pretty bad shape. Here comes some of the data I was talking about. I don't want to get too far in the weeds, bore everybody, but activity miles, you know, we get this data from complete miles of activities divided by average daily membership. And you can see on the side there that's field trip miles. It's a little bit less. We do a lot more activities through the WHSAA. So, bus referrals, we were on a good trend where we were going down. It seems recently we've been trending back up. But as a cautionary note on that, most of these referrals are minor, what we consider in their first stage. Usually when a student gets a first stage referral from a bus, that's as far as it ever usually goes, and we correct that action. The drivers work with them, we work with the schools. We appreciate everything the schools do with us to make sure transportation on the bus is safe and dependable and enjoyable for all. So we're hoping it'll start trending back down. Average age of the bus fleet, you know, with working with the board and getting approval for new buses every year, this helps keep that age down. Buses are more reliable, they're safer. So we appreciate, you know, getting to work with the board and getting new buses every year when we can. The cost per mile, this kind of goes with the previous slide. Newer buses take a lot less maintenance. The newer technologies they're coming out with are a lot more dependable. Used to be, you know, older engines were dependable, but they had things you kind of had to chase all the time. These newer ones are pretty bulletproof for the most part. Most of the bus manufacturers new what they're doing, and they improve every year, and it seems like they're just getting better and better. This is another slide that, it doesn't look very good, but as a cautionary thing, it's all of our data includes everything. So this is minor accidents, major accidents. It doesn't matter if it's a fence post or a rock. We include that into this data, so we have a complete, figure.
So how many major do you have a year, would you say? And what would be a major? I mean, I got an
Do you have a
idea.
dollar amount associated with it?
I would consider a major where someone is physically harmed.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I'm relatively new to the district. I've only been in about 7 months, 8 months.
Okay.
And what I've been told is that there's only been 2 what we'd consider major incidences within like the last 10 to 13 years.
It's not real.
So what we're talking is, these are fender benders. He scraped a car,
Yeah. These are,
or a car scraped us.
yeah, and that is included in this data too, is where we're not at fault. This is still compiled into our data, so we have accurate records.
Okay.
So even though it might look bad, it's really not as bad as it looks.
Well, I guess the only thing was looking at the trend. Obviously we have the COVID years in there, but 2021, 22, it's climbing a little bit, so that's,
And that kind of goes along with, Evanston is growing. We are getting more people. There's more traffic, and it gets a little more, what would I say? It's a little harder to negotiate some streets with a big bus and a lot more traffic. We do constantly train the drivers. We look at routes constantly. If we need to make adjustments, if we need to do anything to keep everybody safe, that's the major goal, is keep everybody safe, reliable transportation. So, same thing with the trend up. I'm hoping we can get the trend to go back down, because every time there is any kind of accident, we review it, we talk to the driver, we have a committee that we talk it over, we train on it to hopefully prevent these in the future. This is just to let you know where we are with staff travel vehicles. These are what we'd call non-reimbursed vehicles. So this would just be like, if the superintendent needs to go to Casper, or we gotta send somebody else. That's just to let you know where they are on mileage and how much they're costing to run. As you can see, some of them are kind of getting up there in age, some of them are getting up there in mileage. That is something that I think that we would need to look at in the future, is maybe replace some of these vehicles. The current strategy is, when the reimbursed multi-passenger vehicles come of age, we can cycle those down into staff vehicles and replace those with something new. My worry is that some of these are aging out faster than the multi-purpose, the reimbursed vehicles are going to be, being able to be passed down.
Travis, how many of those do we have that are student use only, Suburbans? Is there 5?
I think there's 5 or 6, yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, and then the Yukon 5.
No, these are only, we have
okay.
additional Suburbans that are student use only,
Okay.
100% reimbursed.
Okay, all right.
And
That's not
the one
including the
who's
staff
saying,
travel vehicles.
when they become of age,
Okay.
they become available to staff.
Okay.
But these are aging very quickly.
Yeah, the state sets a minimum age of 15 years or 200,000 miles for the reimbursed student vehicles to be passed down. Once they hit that age, they kind of leave it up to us that we can either, sell them, scrap them, use them for staff vehicles, but they have to hit that age limit before they'll let us do that. A lot of them are maybe 10 years old. So we still have another 5 years to go and a whole lot of miles, and that's where I don't think some of these vehicles are going to make it that far.
So if you look at the trend here, you can see that 10 years ago, we had tried to keep up on our vehicles. 10 years ago, our budgets dropped, we cut a lot of areas, cut staffing. The 2018 Honda, was a lease vehicle that we took over from Jaron, and the Subaru was really the last new purchase that has been made in that fleet. And you can see that at some point, when there is money available, we need to look at.
Well, I was just looking at the, 83 cents per mile on that Suburban. That's getting pretty expensive to maintain.
Yeah, it's that, and then, it's the worry about sending someone to Warland and having them on the side of the road, stuck somewhere. That's... And we're working with other districts to see what their procedure is, what they are doing to replace these vehicles, if they have like a year and mileage recommendation, or just kind of seeing what they're doing.
Yeah, because we're 18 years old on them Suburbans, Yukon, so.
And some of them look it.
Yeah. Oh, I rode in one, trust
Yeah.
me. We need a new one.
Yeah, they're getting there. And it's when we have funding available and we actually have a good, procedure set in place to do that. That's when we'll look at this a little bit more in time. Potential savings, along with buying buses every year, we can submit for DARE grants, which I've already done this year, and I'm waiting to see if we get approved or not. The grant applies up to 25% of the total cost of the bus is what they'll pay for. So it really offsets the cost in a big way.
So environmental quality, would that assume that we were going to go to a natural gas bus or electric bus or what to get that 25%?
Just replacing the old diesel technology with new, cleaner diesel
With
technology.
type. Okay.
Yeah, that's the same. They have standards on what years of buses they'll allow you to put in for. Like, you can't put like a 2017 in and just say, hey, we want to get rid of this. They'll say, no, it's got to be, I think it's a 2004 to a 2009 year. It's just better, cleaner.
Okay. Emissions.
Yeah, emission standards. They would love everybody to go natural gas or propane, but it'd be hard, especially where we're at. In the shop, we're updating some repair procedures and maintenance industry standards. Like I was saying, with newer buses come newer maintenance schedules. So we're just updating that. You can go further on your oil changes now. You don't have to change coolant as often. You can, all kinds of things, the way you repair buses. So we're slowly upgrading everything, getting it to the new maintenance schedules. We've gotten new software, some new training for the mechanics to help with that, and I see that saving us quite a bit of money in the future. If they can do more repairs in the shop instead of sending them out, that saves us a lot of money. Outside vendor repairs cost a small fortune. So, some of the issues we're looking at in the future, we've already talked about staff vehicles. Another big hit is the hydraulic lifts in the shop. They're in-ground lifts, they lift the bus, they're big, they're aged, they're put in when the building was built. Normally they have a 20-year lifespan, so we're well beyond that 20-year lifespan.
So we had this conversation a little bit when George was here. Are we set on lifts? Is there an opportunity to utilize a pit instead of a lift and not go with a couple of lifts and go with a pit to handle some of the work that needs to be done to offset some of the cost, or you think we need multiple lifts?
I would strongly recommend lifts. The pit is nice for doing light things like changing oil, or more often than not, having the bus in the air is where we need to be. Because every time that bus is in a bay, we do inspection procedures to make sure that it's safe. And that's really hard to do in a pit. I guess...
Are lifts reimbursable?
So there is some gray area with the lifts on being reimbursable. The state transportation director and I have had some conversations. Where they draw the line is remodeling. So the lifts are reimbursable, but there is some concrete work, some civil work that needs to go in there. So that's the gray area, is do they consider that remodeling or not.
So would you replace the underground with above ground lifts, is that, or would you replace the mechanics of the below ground?
Would prefer to do the below ground.
And they do that?
Yeah.
So I guess I was going to bring this up. If you have the opportunity, go out to the Wyoming Department of Transportation, and they have those portable lifts that they put on their snow plows that are pretty handy without having to be fixed in one area, that they can move around a little bit. And maybe that's the option of a set that's like that, and then maybe one that's fixed underground, because obviously the cost associated with that's going to be extensive, having to take the other one out and put another one in. But if you can find something that is portable like that out there, maybe we can have a little cost savings with that kind of a lift that we could have out there. So I don't know if you've gone and looked at them or if you've seen them before. Yeah, so. But anyway.
Yeah, I've seen those before. I've actually worked with them personally, mobile column lifts. They do have advantages. They are faster. They're easy to work with. The disadvantages are if you need to take a wheel end off to do brake work or wheel seals, then it presents another set.
It says here that they no longer meet standards. Can you expound on that a little bit?
So, it's just like everything else. New safety standards get released all the time. There is an automotive safety group for just automotive lifts. They update their standards all the time. These are so old, they don't meet any of the new standards. We've actually had a company come out and look at some of them, and they say they don't think they'll even certify them again this year.
So are we putting the district at some sort of liability by having these lifts in?
We're getting on the verge of that. If I'm going to call them and see if they'll come out and look at them again this year, and
Well,
they
quite clearly,
certify
if they
them,
don't certify them, you can't use them.
that's kind of where we're at.
I mean,
And that
so
puts us
we're
in a bind.
kind of getting in a pickle here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I understand it's a lot of information to get thrown at, but it sounds like George has kind of approached you with this before a little bit, and yeah, I just don't know how it's to break it to you softly. I mean,
And that's, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, that's the issue with budgeting for the last 10 years. We've cut department budgets to the bone. And you just can't keep doing that. I mean, we need to put money into the infrastructure. We are 85% of our budget goes to staff, and that's where the money needs to go. But need to have the discussion. At some point, money needs to go back into these departments for their infrastructure.
So what about ESSER funds? No way it can be utilized or anything like this at all?
No. COVID impact. It has to be COVID impact.
Well, everything
Really tight.
is COVID.
yeah, the lift's got.
Oh, okay, all right.
No, ultimately, we're going to do everything we can to get these to be reimbursed by the state. I've been working with Jaron a little bit about major maintenance, and we're thinking maybe if we can show that we're going to work together, that major maintenance may pay a little bit and the state will reimburse a little bit, or we're kind of seeing where we're
So
going
I'm
with
going to
this.
throw this out there. Give us a ballpark, what we're talking about. You got 2 lifts out there right now?
3.
You have 3 lifts. What are we looking at
The last estimate I was given was about $300,000 a piece.
a piece? So
That's
we're
just
at $1 million.
because all the work that goes in, they got to cut the concrete out, they got to pull the lifts out, they got to do a bunch of civil work.
And that's why I was saying, if there was another alternative to it, and not going back underground where the civil cost was going to be associated with it, and if we went another route where we had maybe one lift that was fixed and maybe a couple portable, and do all your brake work and everything, and your tires and your brakes and your lines on one, and then the other ones to do other service from underneath it. That's what I'm saying. Instead of going $1 million, is there some way that we can go and get it for $750,000, save us $250,000 by going with those other lifts that might work for some of it, so.
Yeah, with that, I have talked to him about if we decide to go that route, what we could do. It still is pretty costly because the lifts that are in ground, we can leave them there, but they have to remove all the oil out of them, and then they have to bury them. And then the way the floor is sloped with the concrete currently for those lifts, you have to have a pretty flat floor for those mobile columns. So we're still going to be quite a bit of money to go down that road. It will be less.
At what point are we no longer certified with those lifts? Do we have a date?
No, I need to get the lift people out to come and look.
It expires this year, though?
Yeah.
That's the date I was looking for, if we can find alternatives and get, yeah, Jerry?
So just really quickly, I know we're kind of going back and forth. I'll come up to the mic. Our goal, recognizing that this is a safety issue. My biggest fear is to have a mechanic or even a bus driver underneath there and we have something catastrophic. So my goal is, I've already kind of carved away, I told Travis, about $750,000 out of my major maintenance in an effort to expedite getting this taken care of this summer. If transportation comes back and says, hey, they'll refund fully 100%, that's a win-win for us. I mean, that's great. But at this point, I would like to have at least 2 of those lifts completely replaced by the time school starts in August, just because of the safety factor.
So on the funding end of it, where would we pull the money from, or do we look at a short-term loan until we figure out what to do with it?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that's what we have carryover for.
Okay.
And the reimbursement would be great. If we were going through reimbursement, we'd have to pay up front, then we'd be reimbursed, makes sense, out of our carryover. Cash flow, if it's major maintenance,
How much
it would come right out of major
Yeah.
maintenance.
Okay.
If we can get them reimbursed, it'd
I
be
do
awesome.
believe if we remodeled, pulled them out, took the oil out, smoothed it out, probably transportation's not.
Probably about
gonna cover
200
that.
apiece.
Okay.
To replace them in ground, we have a better chance to do that.
Okay.
So can I ask, would we be silly to do 2, given mob and demob and all these other things for the contractors to come and do that?
Our best bet is 2.
No, I mean,
Do all
are we
3.
silly not to do 3?
So, Travis, you want to?
Yeah, we were just discussing this a little bit. If we can get them to reimburse the lifts, even if we have to cover civil work, we would be down to just around 200 for the lift, and then we would just cover the civil work.
And members of the board, that's why we start our budget process tonight. That's why transportation is always first. It helps us, helps you guys when we get to that point where we can explain why we budgeted the way we did. So these are definitely in our view, and you'll get a chance as we move along the budget process to see how we're budgeting and why we budget.
I guess timing is the other consideration, is if we are going to go forward with this, that needs to happen sooner than later, so we can get that designed and put in place. Because it's got to be in place before we try to get things ready. We're talking July, August, getting buses ready at that point, so we need to have these things done midsummer, so.
And that's,
Transportation is always presents first, because they usually ask for 2 buses. We need to get that approved typically in March, so we can purchase 2 buses to get fully reimbursed. And we just keep that fleet as soon as possible.
and Travis can attest, I've been after him. We've been back and forth since October.
Yeah,
and
this has
we're
been an
trying to-
ongoing thing for a month or 2 now.
to get firm quotes from companies so that we can kind of get the bidding process and be ready to go. And, although it's now February, our goal is to have this expedited so that
And the issue we
can
have
move
is
forward.
delay on parts and materials.
Yeah.
So
So-
sooner than later, that we need to get going, so.
But it definitely is a concern, and that's why, we definitely want to have this rectified, whether that comes out of major maintenance, whether that's reimbursed or whatever. Right now, in my budgeting, I know I can take care of 2 of them. I'd love to take care of all 3, but we'll see where we're at.
How soon can we know if there's reimbursement available?
I can't say for sure. The last time I talked to the state transportation director about that, he basically just said, send them a letter with some solid figures, and then they have what they call the PTAC committee, which decides what is reimbursed or not, like when it's the gray area kind of stuff, and they would decide and let us know.
So I guess this is my point coming forward, is we just need to get it done. Then we go back after the reimbursables. So our carryover funds, if we have that available, and we have our major maintenance money, we need to get this done, and then we can work on the process of getting reimbursed, because we cannot not have them. So,
When do we have to start chipping concrete if we're going to meet your deadline?
That I'm waiting on the manufacturer. That's why we've asked 2 of them to come up. I've dangled the golden carrot, and they haven't showed up.
Sorry, I'm
'Cause I-
addressing you because you're standing by the mic.
No, it's a company that I have worked with in the past. Yeah, I've been in contact with them, and they are not. I guess would say certified to do work in Wyoming or licensed. I don't know what that's all about, but
Wyoming
they
have a
are
license
supposed
for
to
that?
be. That's what they tell me.
That does.
Certain vendors can work in certain states, and what that means is their area might just include Utah, Nevada. They're not allowed to come here. Our rep might be out of Denver.
Denver, Colorado.
Even though
Yeah.
they're 90 miles away, I've got to wait for the guy that's 520 miles away to make it worth his while to come here. Even though I'm saying, look, I've got $1 million, come here, I need you.
Got it. Thank you.
So,
And as more information comes available, we will be sharing that with you, of course. This was just to kind of give you a, as a heads up update that this is something we'll be looking at soon.
And I guess that's my thing is, because next month's March, and then the next month's April, and then next thing we know is June and July. So that's what I'm saying. I don't know if we need to give approval for you to move ahead that direction or not, that as soon as we get,
That's one of the reasons why we do this, is so you
Okay.
guys can see we're moving forward with it.
okay,
And so you're not surprised when it comes back with a bid for $750,000 for 3 lifts.
okay,
That you know why we're doing it ahead of time. So again,
okay.
just trying to get ahead of the game as much as possible.
All right, back on task.
Okay. I definitely can try to have some more information for you next board meeting.
Okay.
So yeah, to continue on, another issue we're dealing with is recruiting and retention of staff. Seems to be everywhere these days. It doesn't matter who you work for or what department you're in. Trying to figure out that magic mixture of how to keep staff here, and I can't give you an answer on that either. Seems to be they can hop from one job to another just to increase pay along the way, and that's hard. One thing is the ELDT standards that we train with, which are federal regulation. It takes time to go through that training, and a lot of them say they'll be in for that 6-week commitment, but they won't make it that far. And as soon as they have a license, that's another thing. So we give them a CDL. They get that CDL and they go somewhere else.
So I guess that's another thing I would bring up, and I haven't taken everybody's time. Because any industry that you work in, you spend a lot of money on training, and it's a huge investment. Is there an offset somewhere where we could pay more to retain them than to keep retraining and certifying and being a training ground for other companies, because they do end up with their CDL and then they move on? So how do we address the training issue and the expenses that we have going out that direction? Is there a better way?
Yeah,
So-
Chairman Peterson, members of the board, we're right in the middle of the study of our support staff to look at the market and what is competitive. And we know that our trainers, bus drivers, mechanics, their salaries are not competitive right now. Thank goodness we're a pretty good place to work, but even though we made significant increases in salaries a year ago, it needs to happen again. That's going to be the expectation. And what we have as an advantage is the separation of transportation, because it's 100% reimbursable. So we can raise the salaries. It may cost us some first year, but they'll be reimbursed the second. So we have some opportunities there. The challenge is, and I'll say, competitive nature, jealousy of one staff member to the other, and we just have to get past that. You're going to have to pay the price to get the people, I think is what it's going to take. Someone with a CDL potentially may get a higher raise than someone that doesn't have a CDL. It's just the nature of what we're facing. We cannot have school without transportation.
We're currently doing everything we can think of to get people to apply, and once they're applied and we hire them, we're doing everything we can to keep them here. I mean, it just seems to be slowing down that we're losing staff, but we're just going to keep working on it until we figure it out. Committed. To continue on, back to the buses, this year, when I find out if the state will allow us to purchase buses or if we get DARE grants, I come to the board for approval if we get approved by the state. That's kind of their deal is buses have to go 17 years or 240,000 miles before they'll actually allow us to submit for bus replacements. So I've put in for these approvals and I'm just waiting to hear what they're gonna do. And then that replacement of the staff travel vehicles is on the bottom, but we already talked about that, so. And that's all I have for you. Any questions or more than that? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thanks.
Chairman Peterson, just want to know, I Travis up here, he's been a really good addition to our transportation department. We appreciate him. Maybe that's one way we can keep people, is to let them know how much we appreciate them. Good
job,
Travis.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I have 6 slides and it's quick. 10 years until I retire. Keep dreaming. Good evening, Chairman Peterson, members of the board. I'm Linda Martin. I'm the Food Service Director. Tonight, I'm going to do some comparison, and just so you know, I'm comparing back to the 1920 school year because that was the last time we had free and reduced information. So looking at when we had free meals for all doesn't make much sense to compare to today since everything's pretty different. So the first thing I was looking at was our free and reduced numbers from 2019 to today. We are up by 2%. A couple surprising things to note. Horizon's up by 15%. UNM Meadows is down by 11%. I don't know whether there's a change in the demographics of that area that has caused the percentage to go down. We certainly have pushed and pushed and pushed to get those free and reduced apps. I feel like we've got them. I don't feel like we're missing out on a lot. But interesting to see the difference between those. Middle schools are down a little bit, but the high school is almost even. So hard to say why, but those are the numbers that we've got from back then to now. Looking at what we've been serving, we are up by about 19 meals compared to 1920 for breakfast. To this date, or January 31st, we've served 33,806 breakfasts and 136,799 lunches. And we're up by about 132 lunches, which I'm very happy with. Now, if I look at the numbers from last year, breakfast, we had served at this point 57,662. So that's down about 24,000. And lunch, we had served 178, almost 179,000. So we're down by about 42,000. Big difference when people have to pay for meals. Our summer program this year, we served 102,000 meals. Half of those were done on the bus, as Travis mentioned. Just know that this next year, that will not be the case. We cannot serve out in the community. Kids are going to have to come to a school and physically stay in a school to eat. They will not be able to pick up a meal and take it. They have to stay in and eat the entire meal on site. So our numbers are going to drop dramatically. I think this slide is probably something that everybody's aware of. Food costs are incredibly on the rise. I compared last year's pricing to this year's. We're up about 20% overall, with the exception of eggs that are up by 325%. when you think about eggs, you think, well, we probably don't use a lot. We get a lot of the pattied eggs, but because we bake all of our own breads, all of our recipes have eggs in them, so we're going through a ton of eggs. So that cost has been really tough.
That's what I was going to say, Star Valley, I mean, the Red Devil Ranch.
Yeah, Red Devil Ranch, we need chickens.
I mean, chicken farm.
There we go. The number of people in this town that are talking about getting chickens right now is pretty crazy. The other thing that we're seeing is a lot of outages. We're still having a lot of supply chain issues. It's interesting, I put in orders twice a week, and I put the order in, and then about 5 minutes later, I get a confirmation that shows me what all I'm not going to be able to receive. Then I have to go back in and try to find other things that I can replace it with, which means it's off of our bid. So now I'm paying a much higher cost for the same item. So that's been a little bit difficult, or a lot of bit difficult some weeks. We're hearing interesting reasons. We can't get brown rice because a factory burnt down, and they can't get the right type of rice to produce the parboiled. The tomato crops are really low right now, so we're having a hard time getting marinara and tomato sauce and ketchup. And they're telling us it's going to be late April, early May. And peaches are down by 16%, so it's really hard to get canned peaches. So you just never know from week to week what we might run into and what we can and can't get. So we get to be creative. My staff is really, really creative, and I love it because they're willing to try different things. We've been baking a lot of new items and creating some new things that are really cutting our costs, because if we can make it from scratch, it's a lot cheaper than having to buy. The good news is, thanks to COVID, we had an excess fund balance, and so I've spent that money on replacing a lot of our key pieces of equipment, namely ovens. At the end of this year, we will, in fact, within the next couple of weeks, we will have every single oven in the district replaced with the exception of 3 in the bakery. So we've got all brand-new ovens, so that's making a big difference. Some schools only had single ovens, and I've switched them to double stacks so that they're able to produce more within their school, which is helping with our labor. And we also got a grant for 4 additional ovens. Those are the ones that'll be here within the next week or so. For those of you who like the cheese wedge, or remember the cheese wedge because it's really popular, so in order to produce cheese wedge, we would have to take big pieces of dough and literally roll to get those done. It took us, we were always pushing it to get the cheese wedges out to the schools in time, so I purchased a roller, and the ladies are just going nuts because we can roll out the dough they did cheese wedge today and they were done by 9:30. We've never been done that early. So that was a fun purchase that they're excited about.
Is it still as good?
Oh,
Yeah, doesn't make any.
Can you classify that as homemade now?
Yeah, well, it was homemade before,
Going through a machine.
but going through a machine to roll out that dough makes a big difference. And we've started making our own calzones and things. We're using the roller for a lot more than just cheese wedge, so.
It is. So.
This is another slide I'm throwing in. I've mentioned this to the board before. I am the Wyoming Legislative Chair for our state. So every year I go to DC, and I just thought it might be interesting for you to know what we're presenting to DC in March. So the number one thing on the list was to make the reimbursement rate that they've put in, the increase that they put in, have that last. It's supposed to end in June. They're giving us an extra 40 cents a meal. That's supposed to go away in June, so we're asking them to maintain that and keep it going, given that our expenses are so much higher.
So is 40 cents enough that you're asking for, or should you go back and ask for
No,
more? We're
well,
20%.
40 cents isn't enough, but the third one down to,
Maintains current nutrition.
is it on here? Maybe I didn't even put it on here. But the other thing is Oh, yeah, expand benefits to offer free meals to all. I mean, that's what we'd really like to see happen. Our legislators from Wyoming are not going to support that, and I understand the cost that's involved. But I did look up what the cost was to feed all the prisoners, and the amount of money that we spend on prisoners is way more than what it would cost to feed all of our kids, and personally, I think our kids need it more, so that's my argument. That we're also asking USDA to keep the current requirements for our meals. The sodium level right now, I think, is low. I struggle to meet it, and they're about ready to cut it again. And it's an interim cut, so it's a cut next year, and then the following year it's going to get cut further. I think our kids could attest to the fact that they don't want to eat cardboard for lunch. So I really struggle with this, and they've been pushing it. We're hoping that they'll push it again. Right now, we have to do 80% whole grain. It was 100%, then they reduced it to 80. It's supposed to go back to 100%. It's difficult to get the products. It's difficult to find products that the kids will eat and enjoy. So trying to get us back into at least 80% would be great. And then we're asking for them to reduce the regulatory burdens. Right now we have peer reviews once every 5 years. It's supposed to go to every 3 years, which means our state has to come out and review our program. The process, I went through it last year. The process is about a month long of intense getting paperwork and everything sent and uploaded to the state, and then having them come out, and then another week of fixing anything that they decide needs to be taken care of. So it's a lot of work for both them and for us. So we're asking them to keep it at the 5-year and not reduce it to the 3-year. And that's all that I had. Unless you have anything else.
Any questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That's probably true. That's probably true. All right, thank you very much. I guess we're moving on to the next area, and this is going to be a fun one. Standard-based grading.
Probably more.
Chairman Peterson, if I may, will you indulge me? I'd like to do a quick overview of where we are with the HRS, then go to our 4th grade, and then do the standard-based report.
Okay, so you're going to cover the HRS stuff?
Well,
discussion items, or
we're
we're
going to
going
let our board members who went do that, but I just want to talk about
Joel,
the
you've been quiet all day.
It's like hearing
And Dan's not here.
I just like hearing you talk.
I can assign.
Do what you need to.
Okay.
Chairman Peterson, trustees, this is just a quick update of where we are with HRS. I think there is a little confusion, and I wanted to kind of make sure we're all on the same page. The high reliability schools model provides a framework to stay focused on the right work for long and short-term strategic planning. We've selected the HRS as a platform for school improvement. I don't know how many years school improvement has been required. Continuous improvement has been part of our model. State requirement, I don't know, 30 plus years. We used to use North Central accreditation, we used state accreditation, we developed our own accreditation, and 7 years ago we made the move to HRS. It is simply a framework for school improvement. The right work. Highly motivated students, teachers, and administrators do not have a problem with working hard. Problems arise when schools are not consistently focused on the right work over time. And I'd say in our district, I've been here for 35 years, we have always worked very hard. We've always had a plan of improvement, and we've always worked those plans of improvement. But we've been in and out of different programs, we've tried different things, we even developed our own improvement plan that was very high level and required a great deal of work on our staff and principals. The question is HRS the right work? And is it focusing us in the right direction? And that's the question that I believe the board has been asked for the last 7 years, and we've presented the last 7 years. This year specifically, we've invited teachers to express their, I guess, feelings about the PLCs and the work that they're doing with PLCs. Our board, probably 7 years ago, made a commitment that we are a collaborative school district, and we expect collaboration with our teachers. I think this is critical. High reliability schools is a commitment. Sorry, my picture's right there. Christy's getting my, there, how's that? It is a way a district or school chooses to live. It's what we've decided to focus on to help us improve. It's a structure that's based not on what I think works, but based on years and years and years of educational research. These multi-studies that have been done by Hattie and what works in schools, the 50 top, the 50 top strategies that work for schools have not, I think, are pretty clearly accepted, and high reliability schools focuses on those effect sizes and what really works in schools. High reliability means being accountable for ensuring that what we're doing is working. That is the key to HRS. It's not us as a district, you as a board determining if what we're doing is working. It's an outside organization that comes in and looks at the evidence. High reliability schools is set up on leading indicators, and the leading indicators are truly the goals that are out there for our staff. And how they reach those goals, collaborative teams do that. The lagging indicators is the evidence. And you guys are aware, we were just recognized, all of our 8 schools were recognized certified level 2, which means they were just certified in level 1 and level 2 last spring. You have to do both. You just can't do level 1 and then pass it and go to level 2. Our goals that have been set by this board and this district focus on those. Maybe. These are the 5 levels. The board that went to the HRS conference saw these inverted. They put level 5 on top and level 1 at the bottom because level 1, 2, and 3 are foundational, so they come first. I kind of like they start at the top and we work down toward the others. If you look at these levels and just read the titles, safe, supportive, and collaborative culture, effective teaching in every classroom, guaranteed and viable curriculum, it's hard to debate that those aren't the work that we should be doing, the right work, especially when you look at the leading indicators. Levels 1, 2, and 3 are foundational for all schools. They represent the hierarchy of priority, worked on simultaneously because they are interdependent. Lower levels are prioritized for improvement first. We started with level 1, made sense, but while we were working on level 1, we were already working on level 2. And we were dabbling in level 3. Now that we've been certified in level 1, 2, and 3, we're dabbling in level 4. That's why we have a presentation tonight about standard-based reporting and standard-based grades. Level 4 and level 5 are optional. So who determines if we move to level 4 and level 5? It's the board. You will be the ones that determine if we move forward. But it's a natural consequences of the work of level 1, 2, and 3 to move to level 4 and 5. I'll be honest, I'm not convinced level 5 is for us. Or level 5 can be done at the secondary. Or even K5. It's a stretch, I believe, and I haven't been exposed enough to school districts that are doing level 5. But level 4 in our district is already moving on. We have a standard-based report card K5. We're looking at 6.8. I think if we tried to take the standard-based report card out of K5, you would have rebellion because they love it. And if you have seen it, it is very impressive. It can tell a parent where their student is, what they know and are able to do, and what they don't know and they're not able to do and need to be worked on. Very good system. To achieve our goals, you must apply 2 things, discipline and consistency. Those of you that have been in our community for a long time, consistency has been something that has always been a concern. You change things every year. You do things every year differently. I can tell you in the last 7 years, we have not moved off of the HRS system as our level of school improvement. That's our framework, and that's what we've used. The flexibility that I appreciate to our teachers and our buildings and the guiding coalitions to do HRS is truly the power and strength. We sat there and listened to Marzano, who put this together with others, and he simply said, you don't have to use our products. You don't have to include us at all. Follow the framework and you will see improvement. Whatever you want to use it. I thought that was pretty powerful. Typically, that's not what you get when you go to a conference that's supported by the individual who developed this. And finally, these are our board goals. This is really what I wanted to get to. We've sat down every year for the last 7 years, and the board has supported these. They end up being district goals as the schools have worked on them too. The Pathway to Excellence, which is our improvement plan, long-range goal setting, whatever you want to call it, is based on the High Reliability Schools framework. Fundamentals of the PLCs, again, we are a collaborative district. Standards and assessment work, K-12, and the goal to provide a guaranteed and viable curriculum. Those are our goals. That's why we do what we do. We still have other goals to improve communication, which we'll always probably work on. A commitment by our buildings and agreed upon by the board is that we would like to be certified 1, 2, and 3 by May of 2024. That gives us a year to work on level 3 and 1, 2, and 3. And that's where we are. Notice there is not even a goal up there that mentions level 4. We're not there yet. We have certain schools that I believe are elementaries, if I'm right. Their plan is to certify level 1, 2, and 3 this spring. And they believe they can do it. That's their commitment from their teams. Be pretty impressive. I hope they pull it off. Secondary schools, they'll need till 2024. And hopefully they'll be disciplined and consistent in that as they move forward. And then the life skills that we've talked about in the past, which are an important part of education, K-12. And those are our goals. That's why HRS is something that you'll continue to hear from us. We think it's important that you, as a board, are educated on where we are and where we're going. Is there a great deal of work to do? Yes. Is there some controversial work that lays ahead of us? Potentially. I think if we're all educated in what standard-based reporting is, maybe not as much as I kind of heard recently. What I'm concerned about is the board, past board, current board, has been very committed that collaboration is a must. We do not hire independent contractors as school teachers anymore. They work as team members, grade level and content level. And that's the expectation of our principals, that if they have someone that does not want to collaborate, we need to help them, I guess, see the light and improve. That is the commitment from this board. That is my commitment to the administrators, and I believe that's the commitment to the administrators to our teachers.
Thank you. Anything else? No, you got me all out of order. My notes are upside down. I don't know where to go from here. So are we going fourth grade PLC? Is that where we're at right now?
I guess
then?
if you don't mind, I can.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just 1 second. I was able to go with a few of the board members and a few principals, Superintendent Ryan, the superintendents, to go to San Antonio for a couple of days to get the framework of the Marzano high reliability schools. I wanted to understand the why. That's a big thing. Why are we doing this? What's the purpose? I'm in the construction business, and every week we go off of key performance indicators, KPIs. That is our culture as a group. And if we don't measure, we don't improve. So I was impressed with the framework, because that they call it. To me, it's like our key indicators. That's our KPI. How can we measure each other's growth if we don't have something to measure to? And we do it very similar to what the schools do, elementary to middle school right now. And I was impressed when they bring up Jim Collins in the conferences, that all this is based off of good to great. That's something we use in the business world. And honestly, when we look at our school organization, is this the biggest organization in this city, in the county? So yeah, to have a framework to measure to is important to see if we're improving. And so Are there questions that I have? Absolutely. Did I learn everything I needed to do? There's a lot I still need to learn, but having the idea of improvement and to base it upon something, I learned a lot, and I was impressed with this program, so. That's what I got. Thanks. You bet.
Yep. Alrighty, Uinta Meadows, 4th grade, ELC.
I'm gonna sit them down in front. Okay.
I gotta stand.
Two of them are pregnant, is that?
Well done, Brad.
It's true.
You guys can take a seat up here.
Yes, you may sit down. That would be fine. So, but what I will ask is if you're going to sit down and address us, please let us know your names.
Chairman
You know,
Peterson,
obviously them.
members of the board, I will do that right now. Does that
Okay,
work?
that's fine.
Okay, so this is our 4th grade team. I'm super excited to introduce them to you. I've got Katie Gomez here, Bailey Heidi, Dulce Alvarez, Nicole Linford, and Karen Piper. We've got a pretty good, and you've got a pretty good overview of the PLC teams and kind of the work that they've done. I want to get a little bit more specific today and talk a little bit, and this team's been super innovative on how they've approached the work that they're doing, especially when they give an assessment. After they give an assessment, you get all this data, and it's like, well, what do we do with the data? Because there's a lot, and there's a lot of kids, and how do we, put our students in the best positions possible with the data that we have. And they have a TACA form that they're going to talk about and just kind of how they process the data. So I'll turn the time over to them. Thanks, guys.
Okay, I'll do the first talking point. Ryan, if you could go to slide 4. Sorry. I don't have my clicker in my hand or
You went
anything.
Too far?
Nope,
No.
keep going.
No.
You're good. Yep, after, yep, right there. That's perfect. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you guys about the 15-day challenge. So as collaborative teams, we discuss for student learning the 4 critical questions. And the first critical question is, what do students need to learn and be able to do? And so our 15-day challenges and our common formative assessments help us answer this question. A 15-day challenge is a progression of learning that is created by the grade level teams, and we target a specific standard for the unit. We start by creating the common formative assessments, or you hear CFA, which is based on the standard being taught within the unit, and creating this first helps us see what students need to master at the end of the unit. We start by taking the standard and we break it down into individual skills, which allows students to be able to go through a progression of skills. And then it leads to students to being able to reach the overall learning target or standard of that unit. So the 15-day challenge, before we even teach it, it's analyzed and edited by the teachers beforehand. Going over the 15-day challenge allows us as teachers to talk about that individual skill and see how we would teach it in our own individual classrooms. When we have these important discussions, we come up with very different strategies that we feel could help the students be successful in completing the goal. This ensures that we are providing a guaranteed and viable curriculum. As you can see, the 15-day challenge is broken up into the day, it's broken up into the learning target or the skill needed to be taught for that day, and then we have our resources that we use to teach the lesson. We collect all sorts of our strategies, assignments, and our skills from our CQLA program and our Eureka Math program. At times, if needs be, we will find additional resources to help us improve the rigor of the lessons or the strategies that we want the students to learn. Then we link all of the resources that we're going to use into the 15-day challenges, which allows all the teachers to have access to the content to teach.
If you go down, I think it might be 6. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about 2 different things. This first slide you'll see is our standards progression. We as a team made this a couple of years ago. You'll see that there's the units that are found in our CKLA program that we use, but we also have standards assigned to each of the units that it best fits in, the proficiency level that it's taught at in that unit, and then the quarter that it's taught in as well. When we create the CFA, we refer back to this document to see which proficiency level we should be looking at to teach leading up to the assessment that we'll be giving. It also allows us to look ahead to upcoming units to know when we need to up the rigor to a proficiency level 3. And we'll know that we have to meet our goal by that time. Finally, this helps us ensure that we are common in all of our grading on our report cards. If we've all agreed to teach to a level 2, then we can ensure that our report cards really are equitable to each other. If you'll head to the next one for me.
We could use it.
This,
Or updated slide.
We had to update this one.
So
If you check your email, Ryan, I sent
We also had a hard.
Piper, are you responsible for this?
It's all Brad's fault.
There we go. We're good. Take that. Go for
okay, this is an example of a CFA that we have scored. So of course, the student CFA is the printed part that you see behind it, and then we go through and we score it beforehand. We do the scoring of this, and we actually create the CFA prior to ever making the 15-day challenge. It's called backwards planning, and it basically just tells us by the end of this unit or by the end of this time period, this is what the students have to be able to do, and then the 15-day challenge is that progression of learning to get us to this point. So the CFA is created much sooner than we ever teach it. We create these score sheets prior to giving the assessment to ensure that we are equitable and aligned in our grading. We always do this before assessing so that we aren't skewing our grading based on the results that we're getting in, like, well, I know this student should be a 3, so maybe this is what a proficient student looks like. Instead, we've done it before so that we really can have a conversation with each other to talk about what does proficiency look like. It doesn't matter that the student usually comes in proficient. We are the ones who decide what proficiency should look like. Some things that we've done is bring out previous years' assessments just to kind of get an idea of what misconceptions students have typically on these assessments or what went wrong in our instruction. And in the future, we'd really like to be better at looking at those misconceptions earlier than making this score sheet so that we can be a little more proactive instead of reactive and try to catch those misconceptions before we see them on the test. We create score sheets like this for every ELA CFA that we do, as well as every math CFA that we do. Up next, you're going to hear Karen and Nicole talk about how our team answers critical question number 2, how will we know if students have learned?
I think this is the really exciting part because after we all grade our CFAs, we need a way to compile the data so that way we can look at it. We're not just shuffling through a whole bunch of tests. We had ways we could do it, but we didn't love them. And after a training with Kim Bailey, she presented an idea of how we could do this in a Google form. Yeah, so after each of us grades our classes, CFAs, we go through and we input the data on a Google form for each one of our students. And this allows us to see collectively how the 4th grade did, but it also allows us to see kid by kid how they did on the questions and the standards. And then on the next slide, you can see after all this data is inputted, we get these really handy pie charts where we can look and see exactly how the 4th grade did on each standard and how they did on each question.
And I'm going to be talking, excuse me, about the talk itself. Mr. Thomas started my speech a little bit earlier. We have done a lot of research in our school with John Hattie and the effect sizes, and the very top effect size is the collective efficacy. It's the largest impact on student achievement. So that's just the belief that all of us more positively impact the learning of the students if we work together as a team, which we do that really well. Which leads us into the TACA. The TACA stands for Team Analysis of Common Assessments, and it was presented to us by a solution tree consultant. Her name is Janelle Keating. And she just took us through the process of going through a TACA after you teach the 3-week unit, and just documenting the learning journey that took place over that past 3 weeks. So during that learning journey, some of the things we would notice or we'd have conversations about might be who taught this standard really well, which students did really well, were there more students proficient. It also determines which targets or standards were higher or lower than others, but it's also a chance for us to highlight one of us as teachers, because if they did something well, they're going to share their strategies with the team so that we can all replicate that same success. So you're going to show us what the Google Forms look like.
Yeah, so on the next one, one more. As I was saying earlier, the Google Forms are really cool with these charts because they show us, we go question by question, so we can see how the students did on each question. And as I said, we can really see the misconceptions that the kids have and the next steps that we're going to take. And then on the next slide, you can see, I think this is where the real power comes in, is in the discussions that we have on each question. Like, I thought I knew how to find the main idea until I started having these discussions with my team, and then I was like, oh, that's how you actually find the main idea. So that's how I'm actually going to present that to my class. So this discussion that we have with our team is where the real power comes in, and then we can take it back to our WIN groups to reteach these things to the kids who aren't quite getting it yet.
And that leads into mine. The next screen is our conversation about Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction. You can see that, again, this is at the end of our unit, so you can see the different things that we've noticed. Specifically, you can see the highlighted where it says next year, or either on an upcoming unit when we teach that same skill. We want to make sure that we try to catch some of those holes before they happen. It also helps us prepare for those future units that we're going to teach when we gradually release some of the responsibility onto the students. You'll see that this is also a time that we talk about, as Nicole said, our Tier 1 instruction, but also what are we going to do in Tier 2 to close these gaps. So this is the next question under the 4 critical questions. What are we going to do if they don't master the standard? So this is a time, again, we have a great conversation about what would be a good topic to teach during WIN group. But we not only talk about Tier 2, we do talk about how the critical question number 4, what are we going to do to extend and enrich those students in that same WIN group? So understand that WIN group isn't just for Tier 2, it's also for those kids who have mastered the standard and need to be extended and enriched. But the most important thing that I think that we do during this time is, I mentioned earlier that we share our successes, but it's a great time to share teacher moves, instructional strategies, and even learning conditions that we use. What kind of small groupings did we do? How do we arrange the students? But these are the questions we ask ourselves all the time, which is, what was the overall percentage of kids meeting the standard? What do we notice class by class? If a team member had great success, what did they do? So the last thing I was just going to mention on here, again, what do we do to extend? Those kids are often put in authentic tasks. Those are also called PBLs, or problem-based learning, or project-based learning. So they're always extended, but we do spend probably 60 to 80% of our students are in some sort of reteach for about a 3 to 5 week cycle, depending on the content area. So anything other than Dulce? Dulce's going to wrap us up. She's turn the corner.
Mine's just going to be quick because they did a great job. Can we move on to the next one? Perfect. So at the end of our 15-day challenges, this is a great time for us to reflection on what went well. And as Karen said, we can talk about what we did independently to make our students succeed, or we can always note what we need to fix or do better on for the next year. So these 15-day challenges really guide our future instructions for the following year. Extensions and celebrations. We do something really cool where we allow our students to kind of celebrate the end of each unit by allowing them to do activities that are centered around the unit itself. So for example, we had a middle age unit where we allowed them to make their own swords and then build their own catapults. Just kind of let them make the connections to the unit itself and therefore enrich their learning. And that's all we have.
Questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
So how do they, one of the things we talked about last month, excuse me, with the science, was that the teachers have to let these kids know how to reach a level 4. Like looking back at all these slides, there's no level 4. How do they reach a 4?
Yeah, we didn't bring a proficiency scale.
Do you want to clarify that?
Okay.
You got it?
You got it or you want me to? I can do it. Okay. Okay. So, as teachers, we come up with these things called proficiency scales, and so it's not something that we hide from the students. We actually create a proficiency scale for teacher that has our teacher jargon in it, but then we go and create proficiency scales for the students that have a little bit more student jargon related. And so within the proficiency scales, it kind of lists the types of skills a level 1, a level 2, a level 3, and a level 4 are. So for example, a level 1 would be a student who might have lots of teacher assistance when trying to reach, you know, the standard, where a level 4 is kind of that enriching, where we kind of take it to the next level for them, where it might be used as more of an analysis, or they're trying to relate it to real world situations. So we display these proficiency scales in our classrooms for the students to see and see where they can have those opportunities to reach a score 4.
And the students track.
And the students do track, yes, and they have.
Students self-track?
Yep, they self-track themselves.
So with that Google sheet, is there space to put a level 4 on there?
We just hadn't taught to a level 4 on that one because that was our first intro to main idea and key detail, but in like unit 5, that's where we were really pushing them further.
Right. Maybe that's what Chris's question was.
Chris, did you get that last part?
No, if they're not on a microphone, I'm not hearing them.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, as they stated, there are level 4, I mean, every student knows what that is. Many teachers have student data trackers where they have a little notebook in their desk, tells them exactly what in student-friendly language, what a level 4 is. So that expectation of a 4, we don't expect all kids to be at a 4. We expect kids to try and stretch to a 4. We expect all kids to be at a level 3, but they all know very well what a level 4 is. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Bennett.
Well, since I'm the oldest here, and I've been in the district a long time, I think when we have an opportunity to tell people how we connect with the lives of our students, I need to share that with you. And Bailey down there, she was a Crompton at the time, but she was my office aide at the high school for the last 2 years. And she came into my office one day totally terrified about being that. I'll never forget it. Because she, I was kind of a terrifying person at times. And in that period of time, by the time I retired and she went on to college, we talked about her future. And she's an example of that connection as an educator, because we talked about her being a teacher. And that's where she is today, and I'm very proud of her, and I just wanted to take that opportunity to tell her, because we never know who we're connecting with as teachers, the lives you're connecting with, and above all the education we talk about, it's that relationship with kids that moves them on into the next level. So thanks, Bailey.
Well, thank you. And one more thing just to wrap it up. what this team talked about today is often the most intimidating part of this collaborative process. It's easy to say we're going to work together, but when you need to bring your results for what happened in your class and present it to those who you're working with, sometimes those results aren't as good as those people you're sitting next to. But they've created this culture in their team where they're all working together. It's not me against you. These are all of our kids. We're going to figure out what works best for each and every one of them and make a plan for each and every one of them to get better. And that's what's impressive with what they've done. So are there any other questions? All right, appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're sliding back up to B.
Okay.
On presentations.
We are wherever you want to be.
How about standard-based grading?
How about that?
That way we'll cover that topic right now.
All right. So, Mr. Chair, just want to make sure that might be the first one.
You're correct.
Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the board, so it's my honor to just kind of kick off the standards reference grading, standards reference learning portion for the 612 group. So a couple of things that you heard. Ryan talked about it, these ladies talked about it, that idea of consistency, right? And that's what I like about the Doug Reeves quote that's on there. You know, the same people that get frustrated at a basketball game, and I've seen pretty much every one of you at a basketball game, and every one of us has yelled at an official, even me maybe, right? Because we didn't think things were fair. Right? And those same people, right, are still okay with inconsistencies in our school around curriculum and grading, right? And that's what we're trying to work our way away from, right? So that we have that equality in opportunity, right, for all of our kids. No matter what teacher they get, we can guarantee, you can sit in that chair and guarantee and say, you know what, it doesn't matter what teacher your student gets. They're going to teach in different ways. That's the art. That's the beauty. That's what everybody brings to the table. But in terms of the curriculum, they're going to learn the same things. May do it in a different way, right? But that's what we're working towards, right? That's the whole idea behind this, all right? So, we, as secondary folks, we want you to hear from the teachers because it's their perspective that matters. And quite honestly, that's where this has come from, right? Ryan showed you. Level 4 is not on our board goals, right? But those teachers that are doing the work around curriculum, right, that have a standards-based curriculum, they have standards-based instruction, and they're coming to our principals and saying, hey, our grading system doesn't align with what we're doing here, right? So how can we get our grading system to align more closely with the work that we're doing in our classroom every day? How do we communicate more clearly to our students and our parents exactly what that grade means? And that's what's going to come through with the presentation today. So, Mr. Chris Knott is going to go through a quick timeline for you, and then I'll introduce our teachers.
Chairman Peterson, member of the board, so I'm grateful to be here. We haven't heard much about how this came about tonight, so I'm grateful that we have a little bit of time to say, hey, this is where it all started. We heard about standards-based grading, standards reference grading back in 2017, and we heard about it because we had heard that a great town in Wyoming, Sheridan, was working with the standards reference grading. But when we heard about that, it did intrigue us, and we were able to gather around 20 people that actually went to that conference. It was in August 2017. So we went and listened to Mr. Thomas Manny. Thomas Manny talked about PLC Light versus PLC Right. And basically what he spoke to us about was the importance of using priority standards to actually determine to actually determine what was important for our students to know from grade level to grade level. And so with the priority standards, it was a 2-day workshop. We worked with him extensively, and he told us how to do a PLC right. And he started out with saying, okay, here's what you need to do. Every state has standards for education. We need you in your content area to look at those state standards and take them apart, okay? And what he used the term unwrap them. And so that, in and of itself, was a challenge for all of us that were there. We had teachers and administrators, and what we had to do was, okay, we know what the standards are. We might not have them memorized, but now what we have to do is break them down. So what this timeline shows you, and I'm not going to go through the entire timeline, it just tells you where this started and then where it ended up. Basically, where it's ended up for us is the fact that this fourth quarter at the middle school levels, we're going to be scoring our students, grading them, as you may call it, based on both employment or work habits and academics. And we're going to be using a level 1 through 4 scale score, as the elementary has already explained to you. So there's a lot more involved in it, but we'll talk about the things involved. It starts with priority standards, breaking them down, turning them into learning targets that we expect our students to know and be able to do. And then other things such as the PLC and the high reliability schools, PLC, as you've already heard, professional learning communities, and the high reliability school format for certification, they all come together to help us teach our kids these standards referenced skills. Okay? So we've gone a long ways from the beginning. As you see, 2017, we're now in 2023. It's not a quick process, but it is a process that's worthwhile. And as we studied this, I became excited about it again. And I think this is a good time to listen to what it's all about and to feel that excitement and know why we're going in this direction. Thank you.
All right. So it's my privilege to introduce Crystal Peterson and Devin Park, as they are our 8th grade math teachers. Come on down. Come on down.
Okay. So I'm happy to be here tonight. I wanted to share our evolution through the last 9 years of working together, and my personal philosophy change on grades. So I've been teaching 17 years, and when I first started back in the early 2000s, grades meant, I don't know. They meant I was smart, right? A parent would come in and be like, what does my student need to do, or what does my kid need to do to get an A? I'm like, well, they need to do this assignment. Do it. Standards were never mentioned, skills were rarely mentioned, it was just do this. So what did getting an A mean? It didn't really mean anything. I had no clue what the student knew, what they didn't know. I just knew they didn't do this assignment or they did poorly on this test. So 9 years ago when I moved here and started working at Davis Middle School and doing 8th grade math and working with Crystal, and we started doing a lot of the priority standards and proficiency skills and HRS work and everything, I started realizing I'd been doing it wrong for the first 10 years of my career, and pretty much every teacher had been doing it wrong forever. Because we didn't know what skills they were. I didn't know what the grade meant. So as we started working on priority standards 9 years ago, I believe, and then we unwrapped them, we did all that, then we started working on proficiency skills. Finally, I actually knew what was going on. I knew what the students needed to know, and I actually knew what they were missing. And really what pushed me to want to have more standards referenced grading was a few years ago when I had a student, I remember us standing in the hallway and saying, you need to be here working on this skill. And their exact comment to me was, nah, I'm eligible. I don't care. It doesn't matter. And I said to him, when you want to get a job and you have to do 5 skills at this job and you're good at 3 of them, your boss isn't going to be happy because he needs you to do all 5. And I know that you are good at this one, this one, this one, but these 3 or 4 you're not good at. You don't know how to do them. We need to bring you in. He said, no, I have the grade I want. I'm good. And it was at that point that I realized I'm not going to be able to get through to a lot of these students until I get rid of the grade and I say, hey, this skill we're low on. We need to work on this skill, this standard we're low on. And that brings it to light a lot more. My conversations with parents at parent-teacher conferences now are so much better than before. Before it was, do this assignment. Now it's, we're good in this skill, this skill, this skill. And I was always jealous of the elementary teachers. When I'd go to their parent-teacher conferences with my kids, I knew exactly where my child was. And I was like, why can't we do it like that? And we can, but we couldn't until we went through all this work, and that's actually the next step that we're at. I can now have a better conversation with students, I can have a better conversation with parents, and it's not about I'm happy with my grade, it's, oh, I'm low in this area, I need to go work on this area. Because when I graduate and I get a job, if I can't do everything asked of me, I need to improve, and if I don't improve, I'm going to be looking for something else. So I feel that's the next step we're ready for. We're kind of, our progression in the HRS work is stopped until we can actually break that one, and then we can move forward with it.
All right, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I think are the pros and cons of this. Like Devin, I've been doing it a long time. Would always kind of get to the idea of, okay, what do kids need to know, but wasn't really sure how to keep track of that and what to do with it next. Went through, it was probably, I was thinking on the way here, about 2013. My own daughter was in 8th grade, and I had kids in my algebra class that I knew they didn't know the content very well, but because I was grading at a 50%, by that I meant 50% was based on their grades, their test grades, and then 50% was based on did you do your practice. And so I knew that their grade didn't reflect their knowledge base. And so kind of played around with that with percentages a bit. Devin and I tried a little bit with 75-25 and really kind of found that the good number was an 80-20. 80% based on your content understanding and 20% based on your classroom participation, or we'll call them academic behaviors. So that leads me into what I think are some pros of looking at standards referenced reporting. I think it's really beneficial that you can identify the standard, the content, the skill. And Devin and I have it broken down really specifically that we can go to our assessment and identify you missed question 1B, that means you don't know how to find a y-intercept on a graph in a level 2. I mean, we can break it down very, very specifically with each student. And I like that we can identify it by content and what their understanding is. So I think that's a pro. I think another pro with this is that looking to standards reference reporting, we're able to take out those academic behaviors. I know all the teachers here and those that left, we're probably all guilty of giving, let me give you a grade, you get 100% if you bring your Kleenex. You get 100% if you bring your parent syllabus sheet. And those are all academic behaviors, but by moving to standards reference grading, we can separate that out and now just focus on what the student knows. Now that leads to kind of a con that I have with this. And we're trying to figure out how to make this work better. By looking away from those behaviors, I'm noticing I've got students who are choosing not to do my work. It doesn't matter. All that matters is the test. I don't have to do my practice. And so by not having something that ties back to that practice, because like Devin said, I got a B. I'm good. But a B is not meeting proficiency on what's expected in our 8th grade requirements. But I'm okay with a B. But you're not going to be ready for next year. So that is a con for me in that we need to look at some way, and I think we've called it employability or work habits, how we can tie that in to make the kids buy into that. Because right now for me, that aspect of moving away from the regular grading, how I can put a percentage to the behaviors, I need some way to give incentive to the kids that they want to go back to doing their work, doing their practice. And I don't know if we tie it in with activity eligibility or how we do that, but that's something that our guiding coalitions have been working on. And definitely middle school is going to look different than high school because we don't have, the valedictorian, salutatorian, all of those kinds of things, scholarships, college entrances, et cetera, But I do like the idea of being able to separate it out by what a child knows, and then how are we going to address those children that are just not meeting those academic behaviors like we want them to have. Because yes, I want them to be able to go on and do all these math skills, but more importantly, I want them to be able to go out into the workforce and be able to know how to work and know how to be a good employee. We talk about parent conferences and how that has changed. One of the first things I do is I pull out and say, okay, let's look at your content, but now can you tell me what your employability rating is? 4, 3, 2, 1, what are you? And the parents will look down with the child and say, well, it says 2. So I can say, well, I automatically know that means you're not doing all your practice. You're not doing all your expected work. You're not being a good employee. If I'm your boss, I'm worried that you're not going to be performing for my company, and I'm worried about the efficiency that you're providing for me as an employer. So it's kind of changed the direction of the conversation when we're able to separate out the behaviors from the academic understanding. So that's what I have on my notes. Okay?
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Any questions? Okay, now this time. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. All right, so that is a perfect example of that team. If you know those two individuals, you know they are night and day different, right? No. Yes. Right? But in terms of being able to come together and work together and collaborate, they teach completely differently, right? Their styles, once they walk into the classroom, are completely different. But I can absolutely guarantee you that it doesn't matter which room you're in, right? You're going to get the same curriculum. You're going to get the same standards, the same focus, and that's what we're working towards. So, all right. So next up will be our high school math group that includes a little mix of Horizon and EHS. Come on, so you got, I said a mix.
I did bring handouts. May I? They're all
So
different, by
again,
the way.
They're what? They're all different?
Yes, so just a variety.
Some of us know, some of us don't know who you are, so, thanks.
So my name is Belinda Hancock, and I'm the math department head at the high school. And what I've handed out, they're all different, just so there's a variety of different curriculums there. You have algebra, geometry, algebra 2. There's a fast track, so you can see what the work has entailed at the high school. It's been a lot of work, but this is to guarantee our curriculum is the same in all of our courses. So we all come together and we use the same proficiency scale. This is also, they're colored because we give them to the students, and they're required to keep them in their notebooks. And it's organized in a way that they can see their progress through through that unit. So you can see that the priority standards are at the top. As you guys probably know, there's it seems like there's a million math standards. So, we prioritize which ones we want to focus on. Of course, we have our supporting standards that fall in there, that mesh in, but we actually, in our grade books, we actually report based on the standards as of right now. So the students earn an advanced, proficient, basic, or below basic on their CFAs, and that's what they see. It's not based on a percentage, it's based on those levels. And they know that they are expected to be at proficient. So those CFAs you see at the beginning are like checkpoints so we can see if our students are progressing at the way they need to progress, or if we need to intervene and do some remediation. So the students, like I said, the students get targeted feedback, so they know where they're at all times. And you can also see on the different proficiency scales that we break it down into steps, so the students can follow those steps. So I think, I don't know, they kind of left, but 20 years ago, I used to do the same thing. You bring toilet paper, I'll give you extra credit. Toilet paper, not toilet paper. Kleenex, maybe toilet paper. But, you know, I mean, we would do little things like that. You know, they'd get their homework, and I'm sorry, but I never knew who actually did their homework, who cheated, and then with the technology these days, I mean, they can just take a picture of a problem and it shows all the steps. This way, you know, if it's standards based and we are progressing as we go, homework it's a behavior that we can't monitor so much, so we have that extra practice, and we build that practice into class time so we can monitor their learning. So that's what I say. Good. No? Do you guys have any questions for us?
We're more interested in your questions than giving you a whole spiel of
Yeah.
what your concerns, because we've presented before and you know what we're doing. So we're just wondering what your questions are. I know that Scott gave us a few, so we're anticipating some.
Really? You want to ask them? No? Anybody? Going once? Going twice? I have one.
We're ready.
Mr. Chair.
So, I guess going back down the line, and Mr. Christenot hit this last month, on the behavior issues, on a standards-based, is there two lines that you guys go down? How do you make sure that the individual is performing outside of school, doing work? You know, some people come in, we have people that can come in, I know kids that can come in and just go through a test and absolutely do nothing, and then still be proficient within what they're doing, but do no effort and anything outside of it.
Yes,
Go ahead.
we do have our professional skills that it's 15% of our grade, and that's all through the high school. So, but that is mainly kept track of in class, because we don't have control over what happens outside of class. People, you know, students have sports, they have home lives that may not support, you know, doing homework. So what we focus on is our professional skills being done primarily in the classroom, and that's what we give that on. So listening skills, doing daily activities in class. You know, if they're just sitting there and we have a whole hour to review and they're just sitting there, you know, we have that conversation, and that's where that comes in. So, did that answer your question?
Maybe. And Mr. Peterson, what if they get it? Like, what if they naturally get it? That's okay.
No, I'm going to go down this road. Okay, so you ready for this? I had a business. I worked, right? I had an individual that was smart, beyond smart, picked up things fast. But I went to his house every day to pick him up to go to work. Every day. He was an hour late. I had to pick him up to go to work. His habits were horrible.
Right.
Absolutely horrible. So where are we at by teaching kids that you can come in and you're going to be okay because you understand this, but I'm losing money an hour a day because you're too lazy to get out of bed and your work habits are horrible. Had an individual in Jackson. 5-man crew. We're all up, ready to go. Individual's not there. Go knock on his door. He's still in bed. I said, okay, I'm going to go get gas. I'm going to come back. We're going to get ready and we're going to go. Come back, knock on the door. He is still in bed. I go down. Now I'm an hour and a half at a crew that I'm paying that has horrible work habits. He come out the front door. I threw him the keys and I says, you're done. Go home. So I understand, yes, But there's a whole hour line, a whole different line that we go down that is workability or work ethics. That, are we teaching that, or are we allowing them just to go in and do a test?
So now we see the light as far as why you as a board really wanted us to bring these professional skills in and why that was such a worry for you. And we don't disagree with you. Like, that's why we brought this.
So a little bit of history on this too, that I think, so Lander has been one of the leaders in moving to standard reference grading, and being from Riverton, I knew a lot of their teachers, and one of the downfalls that they did is they didn't count, we call it a professional skills grade, because that's what it's called in the industry. So we used to call it employability, but we've changed it to professional skills. But what happened in Lander was the teachers didn't feel like there was any recourse to actually work with kids on these behaviors. So at the high school, we've actually, it's counted as 15% of their grade. And so we do grade them on it. We actually do very specific work on that. Teachers put comments in it. And so that's been a very positive thing. But to me, I think it's really important to have that recourse to be able to deal with that, right? And so that's, anyway, I'm pretty adamant about it. And just learning from Lander and kind of that mistake that they made. And so that's why at the high school we've made that decision. As to actually it is 15% of their grade. We asked a lot of advice, why 15, and really the number around the nation is between 10 and 20% is typically what it's graded and counted as, and so we chose 15 as a guiding coalition. So
Just a question
I'm sorry.
Just a question I have. The criteria of grading, is your test on a Chromebook and they click A, B, C, D, or is it a worksheet where they have to show their work and how they got the right answer?
Right now I use a program called Mastery Connect. Oh, I probably should get like, is this one working? It is, okay. So right now we use a program called Mastery Connect, so it is multiple choice. However, they're very good test makers, so it's common for the test makers. It's kind of like the people that make the ACT or SAT. Now, I'm not saying that, you should base your value on a test grade, that's for sure. But it does make it so we can put data together a lot easier. It also makes it so we have a lot faster feedback so that we can go ahead and get kids the help they need. And to address your concern, Mr. Peter, it is actually a sell as a teacher to say, hey, if you do this work, it's going to pay when you go ahead and take this test, because they aren't easy, right? And so most of the time, there is a pretty big correlation between the work that we give that's going to help them do well in that standard, and the way that we see that is on Mastery Connect for the math team anyway, right? And that also breaks it up into standards so we can see where they missed. I hope I answered your question.
Chairman Peterson, members of the board, if I can add this, and hopefully it's not out of line or inappropriate, but you're talking about something that has been a challenge for educators since time began.
Sure.
In terms of a teacher trying to teach and have a student that is non-motivatable, doesn't show up, is always tardy, really has little to do with performance-based education and the grading at all. It's a challenge that we've always faced. And even more challenging than that is you cannot reduce an academic grade because of attendance. That's why we have an attendance standard at the high school. You may still get the grade, but we cannot award credit because you didn't hit the mark. Big difference. The skills you're talking about have been built into quality educators' performance forever. And it really separates the most talented teachers who can motivate their kids, get them to class on time, hold them accountable if they're not, and it's the overall structure of the school. What are we doing as a school program to emphasize these professional skills? And you are 100% right. We cannot get away from them. If anything, one of our goals that you saw was those life skills. They are vital that we focus on. Affecting performance in an academic grade, a little scary to me. But are they expectations we need to communicate? I know if my kids got a poor citizenship grade, talking about the same thing, different name, I was more concerned about that than that A, B, C, or D. And if we can identify those professional skills and communicate those to parents that they're not being met and expectations that if this doesn't continue, someone's going to have to pick up your kid to go to work, and sooner or later they're going to be fired. That is what we need to be able to communicate, what they're not doing in terms of professional skills. And that is the power of standard-based or performance-based is you can communicate those, not just drop the grade at 15%. It sits on a report card that these are the professional skills that your kids need work on. Honestly, that's...
And that's what I guess I'm going down. Because when he was saying it's 15% on the professional skills, should it not be evaluated as a 1, 2, 3, 4 as our other system? And should they not be evaluated as that? And then, so then you divide it out to 85, 15? And do you hold that according to eligibility? So we can have a kid that just behaves like a complete dink in a classroom and still score 85% on a test, but yet he's eligible. So where is the discipline for a kid that has behavior issues?
Okay, we're not talking about, I mean, we'll talk about eligibility in terms of where each school, right, is in that process.
I know, and
that's not the purpose for tonight.
I know, the purpose is not for tonight, but what we are talking about proficiency.
And those are questions that will have to be answered.
Okay, right, yeah.
Yep, absolutely. All right, you guys are good? Okay, awesome, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Aaron Russell! All right. Aaron's got an excellent perspective as a singleton, right? Because we talked a lot about collaboration and a lot about how these teams come together and do this work. Aaron has the most guaranteed curriculum that is going to be talked about tonight.
Yes.
Okay, as a singleton, she is always right and it's always guaranteed.
Yes, and that's my favorite part of my job. No, so I'm Erin Russell, and I teach theater at the high school, and I am maybe the most single of all singletons in the whole school, because I'm the only one, or in the whole district, I'm the only one that teaches theater at any level. So, my music friends get a chance to work with their music, the middle school and things like that. And kind of being a voice from the Guiding Coalition and a voice for also some of those departments that feel like a bit of a square peg in a round hole, or vice versa, right? This has not necessarily been the easiest transition for us. I watched that 4th grade team, and I'm like, wow, what would it be like to have a team, right? Like, because it's just me, and that's it. And there's a lot of people like that. Ramona is her own team with strings. She's it. A lot of our science teachers are the only ones that teach chemistry, and that's it. And so there's kind of there's a lot of, I don't know, complications, I suppose, that come up with that. However, there's a lot that is a part of this that is at its basis just good teaching. I mean, let's face it, knowing what your goal is. I was taught that, 20 years ago when I got my degree. It's not like this is brand new stuff in some ways, right? But so I think is so wonderful and so good about this, or can be, is that chance to collaborate when you have that opportunity. But not everybody does. Like Doug said, I don't have a lot of arguments in my department. Sometimes I argue with myself, but those are the hard days. No, sorry, they told me not to talk about that. No, I'm just teasing. No, it's great. It's there. So we do have some concerns. As a parent who, 2 of my kids have graduated. My middle one is a senior. I have 2 more coming up. I also have concerns from that perspective as well, yeah? As we look at opportunities for scholarships, opportunities for, continued learning, I'm not going to, and these guys know me real well, but I haven't not shared these concerns with them, right? So it's not like this is anything that they haven't heard before. These are things that are concerning, because you definitely want your child to and have those opportunities still. So I do know that among the high school teachers, if that's the decision that we make, I think most of us are very much saying, if that's what we're doing, then we're all going to be on board, and we're all going to do this. I can't speak for every department, but I can speak for mine, that, you know, even if we say, I don't know if that's the best, we know that we have to come to consensus, or else it's just going to fall out from under us. So there's a few things that, like I said, that I feel like are very positive with this. It's good teaching. There's so many great things there as far as knowing what your standards are, working through all of that, knowing what your year-long goals are, what your unit goals are, pardon me. That's good teaching. And so knowing that is wonderful. Letting and communicating to our children, our students, where they're at in those, that's wonderful. That is good teaching. To say, you are here. And for my students, especially in my intro classes, that's quite simple, because I can say, David, you're not facing the audience.
That's true.
We don't want to see your rear end. Thank you very much. Turn around, right? And it's really easy for me to go through with those intro kids and find those discrete skills. Some of us, again, my advanced kids, I teach some of them for 3 years in a row. And are we still working on discrete skills? Yes. Are they always measurable with a rubric or a quiz? Or not a rubric. They're always measurable with a rubric. But are they always measurable with a quiz or something like that? No, they're not. And in that moment, when I say, Maya, hold on, stop, I want you to come back here, and I want you to redo that scene, and I want you to say it this way. That is, if I stop and I have to take a moment and write that down, that slows down the entire process, slows down the whole thing. If Mr. Zigweed has to stop his band and say, wait, I have to document everything, and so when I talk about us being a square peg in a round hole, those are some of the concerns that we have. However, I will say that as we've gone through this process, as we've unpacked the standards, as we have reviewed all these different things and set long-term goals, I can tell you that it has definitely helped us improve our practice. I don't think that this is I don't think that this is without merit. It's just that not all of us fit into that perfectly. Does that make sense? Sometimes I talk and go, I don't even know if I just said anything that is cogent there. Anyway, and I know there's a lot of us that are in my situation that feel a little bit isolated. I do also want to say, though, that when we bring our concerns to Doug or Merle or Scott or whomever, they listen and they give us ideas, and they try to help us as much as they can. We were able to go to a training my department did in Long Beach in November, which we kind of felt like we won that lottery because it was wonderful to be in Long Beach in November. But when we went there and went and got some good training with Solution Tree, I felt like we had a lot of breakthroughs for our department, and especially in being alone but still trying to support each other. So we hope that we can still use and make use of those, what's really good about this program, even when we're all alone. Do I still have concerns? Yes, but I shared those. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so Erin is a really good example. She is a singleton, and she could take a break. But some of her proficiency skills are some of the best that we have. I mean, she has put a tremendous amount of work into becoming absolutely explicitly clear about what she wants her kids to know and be able to do. And I think it's been a benefit to all of her kids. All right, Horizon. We have a few of our Horizon teachers that are going to talk about the communication that they've had with their parents and how they're communicating their grading.
So when you were talking about proficiency
I think
scales,
wonderful.
that's why I ran it up here. So this is what Horizon uses for our professional skills, and we just adopted this from what the high school put together in their guided coalition, so. And a lot of, the only thing we changed is we only do 10% for their professional skills at Horizon. It's real hard for a lot of our students to get above that too, on this scale. Right? So, do you want to talk about the grading policy?
A little bit. Introduce yourselves.
Yeah, introduce yourselves.
Oh, sorry, I'm Andy DeCoy.
Okay, we're good.
Hello, Chairman and board members. I'm Arnie Hangestag. I'm a social studies teacher at Horizon. A couple themes I've been hearing here are consistency and clarity. And I think what we're trying to do with proficiency scales and our grading system is make it really clear what we're grading and what we're looking for. And with our approach here, sending this out to parents, we were trying to make sure, I mean, I kind of live in a world where I've got multiple PLCs. I've got a PLC with my Horizon team, and then I've got a PLC with my content area at the high school as well. And so that kind of makes that consistency. And agreeing on this makes it easier to communicate to parents what our expectations are and what they should expect to see. So there's no surprises. And I think the other, aspect of this is having this proficiency scale. The way I use it in my classroom is I have students self-grade, in a sense, self-assess. And I'll be going through this process on Friday with them. I have them look at this. I say, where do you think you're at? And then I go around and I have a conference with each of them, have a conversation with them about it, and kind of agree or disagree based on what I've seen. I try to do that multiple times a quarter. It makes it really easy when it's time for parent-teacher conferences and the students sitting there with their parents and the parents wondering, what content knowledge does my student have compared to, say, their professional skills. And a lot of, and that changes the conversation with the parent. As a parent, I want to know that. Is my kid behaving in the classroom? Is that a concern? Is that something I need to address as a parent? And if I can be really super clear on that with this, I think that makes for a more positive experience in the teacher conference setting. So.
And I just want to say one more thing. Throughout those 4 weeks, because we grade on this every 4 weeks, we keep a little checklist and a tally for every class, every student. How many times were you tardy? How many times did you have your cell phone out? How many times were you ready and prepared for class? Did you have your Chromebook? Did you turn your assignments in on time? All that kind of stuff. So you can really have that in-depth conversation with them. Well, how come I'm not a 4? And you say, well, here it is. Here's the proof. And you can go back on a daily basis and show them you were tardy 17 times in 18 days. You had your phone out on your desk or on your hand 18 times in 18 days, so that's why you only have a 2. Another big thing that we implemented this year at Horizon, and it's helped a lot with the professional skills too, is we give them 2 weeks after the due date to turn in a missing assignment. Okay? So you'll know up here on score 4 it says that they take ownership of learning by completing retakes, making up work from absences immediately, or they request a PLT. That's the professional learning time, kind of like devil pride time, demon, I don't know what they call it at all the schools. Ours is PLT. So we have that extra intervention time to do Tier 1 work with them to get those done. So by giving them those 2 weeks, we just started this at the beginning of this quarter, it has made such a difference. Because now you can say, that was due on the, on the 16th of January. It's the 7th of February, I'm sorry. You can't make that up. You're stuck with the grade you have. And then we also say that at the end of the quarter, if they end up with 50% or less on the standards that they didn't meet, we'll work with them a little bit, especially the seniors, to make up those areas and those skills that they missed out on or lost. But if they have a below 50, they didn't even try. And no boss is going to give you that, just like what you were talking about, time and time and time and time again to be late or tardy and not get things done. So you have any questions for us?
So this is 10% of their grade?
It's 10% at Horizon. I know the high school does 15,
No, that's
but we
okay.
decided
That's
10.
what you had. So my other question is, I'm not picking on Horizon students, I've been there, but you guys have a little more challenging students, am I saying it right? And
Some of them are awesome.
I know, but what I'm saying is, no matter what the student is, what are the consequences if they don't do it? I mean, they just don't get the grade, is that the consequence? A lot of kids don't mean anything to them.
You know, I have, it's kind of,
help you with that. So two things are different about Horizon with that is we still have summer school and we still do credit recovery, Apex online. High school uses that too. For seniors, you'll see an exception for seniors in there because we want them to graduate in 4 years. So really the concept behind standards-based learning references is not letting students off the hook for the learning, right? We don't, we're not going to give up on you. You got to learn the material. So if you didn't learn it that way, we have built-in intervention time too at Horizon, where beyond the PLT time, we have a first hour time where if a student doesn't pass a class, they go back and they retake it. Horizon functions on a quarterly system too. So part of the reason we arrived at 10% was that our kids get twice as much feedback on this. They get a grade on this, 8 times a year versus, just semesterly. So that it's chunked in smaller chunks. So that's kind of how we address those kind of issues at Horizon, which is a little bit unique to Horizon.
So you use summer school?
Mm-hmm. Yep, summer school has been on our building the last few years, actually, yeah. Yep.
So I can see part of your challenge too. What percentage do you think is your kids fall back into a tier 2?
Like 90?
A lot of them start in tier 2 that you have to go back on.
The first couple weeks of each quarter were good, and then and then they're all tier 2. But I have a great group of usually 10 to 12 that come to my classroom every PLT, and that's when we do student council, yearbook, we plan activities, and so that's kind of the enrichment group that are passing everything, that have score 3 on everything, and they come do fun stuff.
And so how do you split up your teaching of the kids that are falling behind a little bit, tier 2 and your tier 1s? You obviously you got to catch kids back up. So who handles that tier 2?
We pick them every Monday during our PD meeting. We sit down and do the PLT group list, and then we hang them up so that they know. Every week it changes, except Tuesdays, that's our SEL time. So that group always stays the same. And then Wednesday, Thursdays, we choose. We go through and pick who needs intervention in what classroom.
And so you will teach your subject matter to the tier 2, and then what do you do with the tier 1s at that point? Do you get them at the same time? I mean, obviously there's time you have to drop back on. Is it during your enrichment time, or is it more when you're at your tier 2?
So there are times where there's tier 1 and 2 going on in the same classroom, but we also have, we do Saturday school, we do some after school, very limited last couple of years with after school. But our first hour, for kids that really need those tier 1 or tier 3 supports, some tier 2 supports, we have a first hour with the core subjects available. Mr. Lux does English, and Mr. Hengestick does social studies, and it'd be hard to go put a kid to bed, but she does math. There's an entire hour for those students that really need intensive, longer supports, and they're scheduled into that first hour. It's not, some of them are retaking the course for the quarter, some of them are just going back and redoing units at a time versus just maybe an assignment or an assessment. So there's a lot of different layers of support, and Horizon in itself could be viewed from a district perspective as a tier 2 type intervention just in itself too. So that helped me. And I'll just wrap things up too. With our grading policy, one of our goals this year was to really work across content areas as a school to use the same grading policy. So this was kind of an experiment on that front. All of our teachers, just in our building, got together and developed this scale, the conversion scale and the policy, and all of them used the same grading scale. It's not, and they're all part of content area teams which are doing that work at the high school too, but we really wanted to experiment with a system. What would it look like, if the building used the same system across content areas? So they've been doing that this year, and we've gained some, I think, some valuable research through that process that we contribute back to the 612 folks as we move forward with this too. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. O'Driscoll. My computer quit.
Thank you. I need to go to the next slide, please. I'm going to go over this pretty quickly. So this is our beliefs. Scores reflect students' academic achievement. Scores will not be used for disciplinary purposes. At the start of the course, students' parents will be provided with information regarding scores, practices, and expectations. So those are the syllabuses of the middle school and high school that we send home to let people know what we're working on. And the last one, summative evidence will constitute the majority of a student's score, which means final assessments, those kind of things will be used at a higher level than some of the other daily work that might be used. So I gave you each a packet. There's 3 things on it. I'm not going to go order from top to bottom, but I'm going to go to the second one, which is the one with the demon on it. That's what I want to start with. This is our traditional report card now. And I want you just to think about this as you look at this student, and this is a fictitious student's name, but a real student's scores. I want you to tell me, what do you know about what that kid can do and what that kid knows?
Good in PE.
Which means what?
He's maybe an athlete, I don't know.
I'd love that you said, I don't know. I also want to add there to the bottom, this is something new that we started last year when we talk about employability skills and work habits. This right here actually defines the things that we're looking at to determine a score on there. On this particular report card, there is no score. If you had the report card of that student, there would be a score on there for each one of that student's classes to tell you how they did in those 3 areas. Be here, be respectful, and be responsible. So I want you to contrast that now to the middle one, which you've seen some of these already tonight. This is a proficiency scale. This is actually an 8th grade science proficiency scale. And if you'll look on it, on the very top are the standards that they're addressing with this scale. And then you'll see the scoring guide underneath. I particularly like this one because of the boxes. It allows the kid to check off as they get good at each one of those things. So by looking at this, you can now define what is a score 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, with regards to that, where we'd want to move to is this last one, and this is a sample. So this isn't an entire report card because this only has two pieces of content. It has math and English. So, in this particular quarter, they were scored in English on those 4 standards, which if you read the standard, it gives you an idea what the skill is and knowledge they need to have. And then to the right are the scores that they received for that. Underneath each content, there's also the employability skills or work habit, which is written out as be here, be respectful, be responsible, and then a score is assigned to that as well. Okay. So what, you keep hearing the word clarity, right? So that's the one thing with regards to standard reference reporting. You can now say, okay, guess what? Down here in math, you are not very good at division of fractions. And we need to spend some more time working on that. And actually, the best thing you're at is writing equivalent, write and evaluate exponents. So, any questions for me on any of this?
Just based off those criteria, those are standards that they're going to prepare our kids to take the ACT and progress further. These are things, core concepts.
Yeah, so when we're talking about these two particular ones, English and math, these are both two tested subjects on YTOP. So all of these are aligned with what the YTOP and the state is demanding of us for our standards. And then they are working on those. So these would all align to your YTOP math and English. Now, I can't address the ACT because I'm talking from a middle school perspective, but...
We'll take care of that.
Okay.
Ask that question again when I get it.
We'll do tomorrow.
Okay, anything else? Thank you, Scott. Was I fast enough?
Good. So when you get up here, I want to know what those two questions were.
We're short of time, so I'm going to keep moving here. Chairman Peterson, board members, I was tasked with who's doing the work, and just really brief. So we've been doing this work, as Eric said, for a few years, but we're all doing it. When you talk about PLC represents the district, and in my own learning this year, I've really focused on the L, learning, right? And it's kind of been brushed over by me, but if we're truly learning, Joel mentioned it, Mr. Weidrich mentioned it, you know, what are the indicators we're looking at? When we're learning, how are we really improving what we're doing? And so when we're PLC, what we've learned, though, is every PLC has to make this work for our school, for our town, for our district. And so there's not just a cookie cutter system, right? So whatever, for example, we've talked about professional skills, we feel right now that that's what we are doing, and we may need to adjust, but we're making it match our community. But who's doing the work? All of us are. To be specific, each building has a guiding coalition. We at the high school didn't have a guiding coalition before we really got into the PLC. And the guiding coalition works to help with this work and find out the needs of the collaborative teams. We talk weekly, we develop PD, we talk about questions, as some of our teachers have mentioned. But each teacher, each team does this work. We've done book studies. All but one of our teams at the high school has now been to a PLC conference, and that's a commitment. It takes some time to get everyone there. We've also worked with some, Maria Nelson, Dr. Haig, and we've only worked with Maria twice this year, I think. We're trying to, as we're learning too, this work, we're kind of getting to a point where we're becoming self-sufficient in this and just using them a little bit. But as you can tell, when I talk about doing this work, there's deeply held beliefs by each of us, and when you have to come to consensus or change. I remember the first time I talked about this when I was teaching about changing a practice I did with just grading tests, and you're sometimes reluctant to give that up, right? And so when you talk about belief statements, definitions, when you talk about collaboration and saying here's what every kid's going to know and be able to do, that is hard work. And that's why we're doing the work, and it's a process. It's still a process. We got a lot of things to learn, but that's essentially answering that question, I hope. Do you have any questions for me now?
No. Stand right up, Mr. Color. So, the high school, at the high school level, it's always a different beast because we have those things on the left, okay? We've got GPA, scholarships, top 10%, valedictorian, everybody has eligibility, but those are things that require a traditional grade. And so what most schools do that go into the standard reference is they have a conversion scale. And so this is an example of the conversion scale. We've run it through our guiding coalition 2 times and came up that this is kind of the consensus one, but it's consensus. It doesn't mean everyone, if that makes sense. There's still some questions or concerns about different parts of it, and so we're working through to try and come to that consensus to where we're all can get to a point where we can move forward. So a conversion scale solves all the other concerns, because then they have a letter grade. So if you have a letter grade, you're going to have a GPA. Okay? And it's interesting because a lot of people are like, well, why are we using a conversion scale? A GPA is a conversion scale from a 100-point system to a 4-point system, if that makes sense. We already do that. We already use conversions at the high school level. Scholarships will not even, it won't even change anything. The valedictorian, the top 10%, all of those things are going to remain the same because they're going to have that conversion score. Right. And so they're going to have a letter grade. The parents will get the feedback by standard, but then they'll have a letter grade attached to it as well. And those are some of the things that high schools have to do because of some of the college stuff, just other outside competing pressures and forces that kind of come in. So I think that by having a conversion, it really solves all of those questions or concerns that I have for any of those. It doesn't change our valedictorian policy at all, not even one bit. It's still the same courses. It's all based on the same thing. It's based on GPA. As far as eligibility, we're working pretty hard on this, and one thing that I can assure you as a board is we will not put in a system that is more punitive or hard on kids, or if you understand what I'm saying. I think our eligibility system right now is spot on, and I think it's working really well. And so you have my word that we're going to find something that isn't going to be, that throws kids under the bus. And so we're looking right now at the high school. As I've talked to many, many teachers, we've talked about it in Guiding Coalition. We feel that we want to use a combination of how they're doing on their professional skills and their academics. And so the question that really comes up is, I could say, Mr. Bennett, is Joel eligible in your class? And you would know that instantly, right? Yes, he's eligible. Academically, he's really high, and he's performing really well. Is Mr. Peterson here? No, he's been been naughty, right? He needs to get some stuff. So I think we're going to find a system that actually has protections in there too. We get the question a lot of times on eligibility, why do we do the Monday-Thursday thing? And I don't know if you guys understand that. Yeah. So the reason that we do Monday-Thursday is it's a protection to students. Okay? Because before, if you came out on the F list on Thursday, you were automatically ineligible until the next Thursday, regardless of what happened. Okay? And sometimes a grade was added too early or whatever, but it just made you ineligible. So the reason we have Monday to Thursday, if you show up, so I'm going to pick on you again, Joel, if you don't mind. If Joel has an F in math, he has till Thursday to get that F in math up. If I look at his grades on Thursday and Joel has an F in science, he's eligible because he wasn't on the same list on math, if that makes sense. So now his science is going to start, and he's going to have till the next Thursday to get it taken care of. And so
he's ineligible on Thursday, but he wasn't on Monday, then he's still good to go.
So now if Joel has an F on Monday in math and an F on Thursday in math, same course, he didn't get it taken care of, then he's ineligible from Thursday to the following Thursday. So the eligibility policy has a really high incentive to get that taken care of right away. So it's a protection to kids. We're going to keep that in whatever eligibility we do. So we're going to have protections to the kids, but we're also going to be able to squeeze on them a little bit as needed. Mm-hmm. And I think we're looking at the high school of including both of those things in. And so as we move forward at the high school, let me just tell you where I am personally as the principal, as the educational leader. My goal is to try and be ready to move to standards reference grading next year. The middle schools want to pilot it. And just so you know, I've got a pilot group of teachers that are actually on a test server doing grades. So they're adding 2 sets of grades, and they're just testing to see how this system works. And we're trying to get all of those things figured out. if I don't have all of those things figured out by the end of April, because I need May and summer to communicate with parents of what we're doing. If I don't have that ready by the end of April, I'm going to postpone it. And as I've really started to dive in, there's a lot of these underlying things that I just didn't know. Number one, I didn't know that Power School didn't have all of our standards in. So as I started delving into that, we had less than a third in there. Right, so now we're working on that. So we're trying to get all of these things and processes in to make sure that we're successful. My goal is I want every teacher to see what it looks like in the grade book, know how it reacts, know how the conversion scale happens, and I want to make sure that happens because personally, I don't want to have a train wreck. And so that's kind of my timeline, is we're working really hard to get there by the end of April. And to see if we can we've got some decisions still to make as far as what are we going to do with zeros, what are we going to do, with late work policy and those kind of things coming to uniformity, and that's what our guiding coalition's working on. So we have till the end of April to kind of put all that together. If we don't have that together and I don't feel comfortable, I'm just going to make that call with the support of our guiding coalition to kind of do that. Now, one of the things that I just want to be really clear on this is I would say about 60% of our staff could jump and do this today. I think another 20% could probably get it done right away, and I think we've got some that need just a little bit more time. And so I think we're pretty close there. And so one of the things too that a lot of teachers, and I haven't even told them this, I have several departments that come to me, when are we going to do this? Some departments have been asking me to do this for the last 2 years, but we haven't been quite ready with everybody. And so as we move forward, that's kind of where we're at. So that's kind of where I am as the principal. I want to make sure I'm ready to go. And I've been talking to some of our staff about that and just saying, if we're ready, we'll move. If not, we won't. I don't want to, I want to move forward at a good pace, but I don't want to kill us off either, if that makes sense. I think you just have to be wise with some of those big structural decisions. This is a big change for teachers when you start doing this. So anyway, that's where I'm at. Thank you. Sorry we've taken so dang long.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I agree we're doing lots and lots of good things. The high school is a different beast in my opinion, okay? I've heard all the good things about standard-based grading. I would like to hear from someone who doesn't think it's so good from the high school. I'd like to hear both sides.
Okay.
Really, I think there has to be two sides to this, and I don't think there should be any railroading in. There should be open discussion on this.
Well, and we do have open discussion, you know what I mean, in our guiding coalitions and in our department meetings and those things.
Did I hear correctly, you thought 40% of your teachers were not on board?
No, I would say about 15% are questioning pretty hard. I would say there's a handful that don't want to do it, right? I'm not going to lie. I mean, there's a handful of kids.
Well,
there
there's always
is.
a handful, but I would like to know if there's more than just a handful.
I think there's, I don't know, I'd have to ask the staff. I think there's a percentage that are tentative.
So if I can,
But I think there's
Chairman Peterson,
a lot of them that are ready.
I think this is a big decision, and
It
I
is.
think it needs to be looked at on both sides, in my opinion.
in terms of a strategic plan and school improvement, what percentage of the staff should be able to derail progress moving forward?
So I guess that's my question to you, is I was going to come back to you on
What percentage of staff
this.
can do that?
You take the right and the pros and the cons, and then you come up with an answer. You don't just take all the pros and ignore the cons.
And you have to understand that too, and kind of what I've seen as a principal is even with standards, teaching to standards, you've heard that and all of that, right? Back in the day, we didn't used to teach to standards, and that was a big deal, right? And I remember the big rallying cry was, "Don't tell me what to teach," right? And, but when I moved here 17 years ago, we had 17 different math programs in this district. okay?
That's what brought this about.
That's what brought all of this about, right? So we had 17 programs, and it was a mess. So we're trying to get more uniform and all of that. But I would say at the high school, there are some staff that have struggled with any of this work as we've moved through standard reference grading. And the same staff have struggled with looking at standards reference grading.
So I'm
talking about, oh,
Yeah, does that make sense? I think it's very similar, the same population of who they are.
it's just this high school report card grading as I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
This. I
Okay.
understand it in the other
Yeah,
grade.
but I would say that a lot of them that I see that are really adamant against the, don't like the standards reference grading, also don't like teaching to standards.
So this brings up my question. If we do not have 100% on board, and they are refusing to teach and grade towards standards, how do we do our reporting to the students and to their parents?
So one thing I've known all along, the ultimate leverage point of getting staff to teach to standards is standards reference grading. And I knew that when we got to this point, it's the ultimate leverage, because then they have to enter the grades in that format, right? It really is. And so that's why you'll start to hear more of kind of the contrary view of that, right? And that's, it's up to everybody's perception to believe what they want, right? I'm not going to say that, but...
Chairman Peterson, members of the board, it's a struggle. It's really the same struggle with the classroom teacher and students who don't want to follow the directions or follow the way to work that schools face. The challenge we have is, you heard earlier that when we talk about collaborative teams, we talk about guiding coalitions, a decision is made, and then there's an expectation that we get on board and follow that decision. Or you get anarchy. It's the same at the district level. This is years and years and years of commitment to follow the HRS structure. As a board, you've accepted that commitment and pushed it forward. It's influenced everything we've done for the last 7 years. Improvement. And yet we still have staff that will not follow board, district, school goals. But yet, we encourage, we support, we send them, we provide training. It's the same as the individual you dealt with. At what time do you say, I got to get you out of bed every day? You're not doing what's expected of a teacher. You need to move down the road. That's an unbelievable challenge for principals.
So the other thing that I want to put a little bit in perspective, I've made a lot of phone calls to principals around the state, and many of them are in the same exact work we are right now. So it's not just us, okay? Sheridan's actually in the same boat. I actually thought Sheridan was doing standards reference grading, but they went through 4 principals in 4 years, and they never could get it done. You know what that does, Mr. Bennett? So they went through a lot of leadership changes. So Lander's there, Powell's looking at it, who else studied? Thermopolis is looking at it. Anyway, I've made several different calls, just trying to get an idea of what people are doing and what they're working on, and so it really is kind of the step. If you look at Governor Gordon's work that he wants to get us to, this really is putting us in a great position to get to what he is saying. And so if you look at, he would actually like to get to the standards-based, where you kind of lose grade levels and kids can move up as quickly as they can. Yeah, which is level 5, which would be an interesting process.
Just remember, we're working on level 3, and we've set the goal for level 3 as spring 2024. We still have time, but I'll ask you this. What do we do about the teachers that aren't willing to work on level 1 or level 2?
So so don't get me wrong. I question everything. I do. And my wife really dislikes me because of it. But we are all in supportive of HRS, right? Anybody in here that is not. So don't get that wrong. We want to make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row, and how do we address those ones that are not on board? That was my question, is we have a handful, that handful that is refusing to go down the standard-based grading, and all of a sudden they decide, I'm not going to do this. Everybody's a 3. Everybody's a 2. You know, and that's what I'm going to rate everybody off of.
I'll let that too, is what you have, is we have a district goal, board goal.
Yeah.
We have building goals that monitor these. The responsibility to see that their teachers follow those goals and directives are the principals. If the principals can't get those people to do it, then it's my responsibility. And that's where I think the rubber meets the road. The expectation is we're a collaborative team, and we still have teams, content areas, that refuse to look at level 3 at all. The idea of a guaranteed viable curriculum, and you guys have seen the examples of that. We don't give up on anyone. At some point, if they fail to improve, there needs to be higher consequences. That's the responsibility of the principals.
Yeah.
If that's not done, you lay that on my shoulders.
So, one of the big things, and the reason I mentioned the rest of the state is, sometimes it feels like it's just us dealing with it. It's not. The rest of the state is working on it. Places all over the nation are working on it. And so, I think it's the right work. I'm down to the last few years of my career, and I'm telling you, I've been all over the place, and this is the only thing that I've ever seen that's raised student achievement by 20 to 30%.
So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Please don't get defensive.
No, I'm not trying to
selling
be.
this to us.
No, I'm just.
We've bought this.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of getting over those little hiccups that we need to get
And we know,
over.
and we know we have them. And just
you have our support. in
Yeah,
this, so.
just know that I know I have them, right, in the building. We're trying to get through those. We've got to, here's the deal, we're going to work to consensus, and once we reach consensus, we're going to move forward. And if there's something where we're not getting to consensus, we've got to work until we do. And so if I don't feel like we're, like I said, end of April, if I don't feel like we're there, then I'm going to pull it, and we'll do it at a late, you know what I'm saying, at a later time. But I want to make sure we're ready to go. Because
How do you envision consensus?
How do I envision consensus?
In other words, can you define that to me? What is
So what we do is so every department has a member that represents them on Guiding Coalition. So Guiding Coalition has a representative. We meet, we go over things. So for example, we're working on eligibility. We meet and we come up with the best solution that we feel like we can. Okay? We take it out, we get feedback from them, we bring it back, we adjust, we take it back until we feel like we're ready for a vote. When we have it and we're ready for a vote, we take it to the staff and say, okay, we're going to vote on this. Once we've reached consensus, then...
So does consensus mean 100%?
No.
That's really my question.
No.
I mean, what is consensus?
No, you'll never have 100%
What's the
on anything.
threshold?
What is the threshold? It's in our document. I can't remember what it is, right off the top of my head.
So-
It's like
So there is an ability for you to proceed without 100%?
Absolutely.
Involved.
Would never be able to do anything.
Well, that's kind of my point.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
so...
I'm good with your answer. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so there is kind of a threshold, and I can't remember, we have it in our document, I haven't done it for a little bit, but that's kind of the process of coming to a consensus.
And I guess that's my question, my point was, we have to be diligent in our evaluations and our assessing of teachers. Because if we have the stragglers and we have those issues, we got to be able to document.
Yeah.
Get them out of the system.
And
Thank you for answering the question that's been asked 3 different ways now.
That's how we do it.
Yeah, so, okay.
And then the board has to support that because it'll come to us.
And just so you know, I've had teachers leave because of the work we're doing. You know, and it's okay. It's okay, it's not the end of the world, so, okay.
And I just have an observation. I'm not trying to be critical. I'm in full support of doing the standards-based grading, and, with everything that we've been doing. But I also have the same concern that Mr. Peterson has in the professional skills. When we all went to school, we had deadlines, we had homework that was due almost every night in most of our classes. You were graded on whether you did the work or not. And granted, it is a lot easier to, like the teachers talked about, to cheat, and I understand that, but I don't think we're weighting the professional skills portion of this enough. That's just my observation, because I feel that that is carried on into their adult life.
Yeah.
I mean, I
And we
carried
have-
those skills on into college and then into my work career, and I learned them through school and having deadlines and expectations, and, you know, yeah, you can make this up 2 weeks later. I don't agree with that.
So, you know, we have staff on both sides. We have staff that would like to have it more, and staff that don't want to have it included at all. The one thing, I think we need to do everything we can as a school to teach that, but I still think it's primarily a parent responsibility.
No, and I totally agree with you.
Does that make sense?
Oh, no, I totally agree with you.
But
This is a parent issue.
I don't want to have practices at the school that make things worse.
I say something?
Yeah.
So just one thing on professional skills. I've had 3 parent meetings the last couple of weeks on kids with behavior and also attendance, and those are stressful meetings sometimes, right? Because there's always circumstances. But when you have a kid with professional skills at 10 out of 10, and they've been doing everything you've asked and they still don't got it, are we going to keep supporting them? We are, and I can differentiate that with a kid, like David mentioned, is not coming when I've asked. Now I can justify what I'm doing too. It's very targeted. I can tell them what they need. Eligibility-wise, if a kid's, even if, let's say a kid's done everything they possibly can and they're a slow learner, are we going to make him ineligible? We're not.
80-15 you are.
Well, I could give them an F right now and they're not eligible, but they're
I know,
working
but
their
that's
guts
what I'm
off,
saying.
right?
So we're going down that line.
Yeah.
Is you're saying 80-15, this kid's doing everything he possibly can, but he's just not grasping it.
Yeah.
He's not 80%, 85% proficient, and then all of a sudden we're making him eligible, but he's doing everything he possibly can to learn what it is.
I think the point is clarity, and I don't want us to think that we're getting less than that. We're actually doing more with it, and it's not all conglomerated into one score. It's very specific and clear about what we're looking at and expecting kids to do.
Okay.
And if I could add, don't assume that because we're letting someone turn an assignment in late, that there's not an expectation of they're on time. The idea is the work that's been done in our first 3 levels has changed some of our thinking. Our district is about the learning, not about the grading. What's important is that we can get a student to master those skills, be proficient in those skills that will help them be successful either at the next grade or in the world of work. If we just say you don't need to finish that assignment, we have lost the idea of it's about the learning. I tell you, as a teacher, my expectation is on time or you got a 0. This work has changed that philosophy. It's about the learning. It's not about my grading. At the same time, I need to be able to emphasize those professional skills and hold the kids accountable for those professional skills. And the idea that if we have someone that's not doing the work, they won't get the grade. They will not be eligible.
If a kid doesn't do an assignment, Jenny, they'll get a lack of professional skills and they'll get a 0 on the assignment. Okay. It's not what am I trying to say? It's both. And so it's actually a more accurate measure of what's going on. So last year we tried 20% with the small group we did. If we change it, we'll do it as a building. We're trying to find that correct mark and hopefully be the same as Horizon. That's work we got to do still.
Well, like I said, I'm not being critical, because you've already sold me on all of this.
No, that's a good question.
But that is a concern. Is just that a lot of these kids are not getting that taught to them at home. Some are, but not all. And so, unfortunately, that does fall on the schools and the teachers.
All the teachers are working really hard, and we need deadlines. All the handbooks we've looked at have had deadlines, and if we told the math teachers or social studies, whatever, hey, they have until the last hour, that's not reality. So, get in when we ask you to get in, come to our pride time, all that stuff. Hopefully, we're getting better at that. So, great questions.
Thank you. Very good questions. Thank you. And that honestly is the challenge that I see with this is, it is new thinking. It is a change. It's definitely a shift in thought. And that's the whole point, is we're focusing on level 1, 2, and 3. It's influencing other things. Level 4, standard-based grading. It's coming, but we have time. We have time to work with those who don't want to do it. We're not giving up on them. We have time. But they should, and the expectation is they're focusing on level 1, 2, and 3 right now. Guaranteed and viable curriculum, which means they're working as collaborative teams to develop that. It's the only way it happens. I guarantee it, the scale they threw up there was probably highly debated, because teachers don't agree on an A, B, C, D grade. Is it 92 or is it 93? Trust me, I've been through that. To get one building to accept a grading scale is nearly impossible because of training, philosophy, whatever. That's what our expectation is we're moving that direction. It's a big move and hard work. My frustration, and you can see it, is for years I've battled under the idea that we're not consistent. You change things every year. And why do we change things? Because people have stood up and fought it. And it's not the majority, it's the minority. Minority should not rule. It should be the data that shows we're making significant changes.
You remember when he was there?
Again, I don't know if there's a good answer, but we are going to continue to work at this. I'm not going to, I'll come in July again at the board retreat and say, this is the results of where we are with HRS, our expectation, and we've adjusted. Remember, at one point, we were all going to be certified level 1 by a certain date. We moved it a year. COVID happened. We moved level 2 3 years back. It's the same. We listen to the principals. We look at that. This has been a long night.
Yes, so we can move on, so.
I'll get off.
And I apologize again, you're gonna hear it every month, I would apologize, because I will question everything. But we will move on at this point, and please don't get us wrong. We know we're moving in the right direction, we just wanna make sure we're moving in the right direction, the right way, so thank you for your guys' time. We can move on. Now we're on to our discussion items, as if that wasn't enough. So we just went through. So first thing on our item is the HRS Summit, which was phenomenal. If we have a report on that.
That's up to you guys. No, I put this on there so you guys can report.
So we get a report.
Already talked.
Yeah, you did.
Talked? Yep. Yeah, he did. I loved it.
I thought you guys already reported.
Oh, we already reported? Yep. I prepared about an hour worth of comments on the meeting in San Antonio. No, the only thing I'm going to say about it, it was phenomenal. I think we learned a lot as a district, as board members, as administrators. There were some things in there that was brought to my attention that clicked. You know, when we start talking about high liability schools, about kids falling out from the crab clawing and crab walking, and we're out running, and curriculums that are just a little extensive, and that we need to base our curriculums on standards and make sure that those standards addressed our testing. So anyway, that was pretty good. From that, we will move on. So next discussion item, budget process and timeline.
Chairman Peterson, members of the board, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this. Just so you know, we do have a budget timeline and a process that we've followed. It works very well. You can get on that. If I can find it, do I have it here? Let's see. The reason why we have these presentations, and typically we don't have as many presentations as we have tonight, you heard from Transportation and Food Service. Each month you'll get 2 departments, and their focus is setting up the budget priorities. So you can hear when we get into that May and June why our budget looks the way it is. We've been really lean with our departments in the last 10 years. We may have to look at that. Hopefully we'll have funding. But this works. John's with me on all of these dates, and we'll just keep working. There'll be an update every month, basically. So right now, we're right in the middle of the legislative process. We have no numbers in terms of our 100, which sets our funding, so getting real excited about the budget makes no sense right now.
So any discussion from any of the board members on budget process and timelines at all? No?
Not right now.
All right, we can move on. Next topic, legislative update, which I think a lot of people are curious about.
Yeah, I'm not, Chairman Peterson, members of the board, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. There is a ton of information out there. I've provided an update to the staff daily. Probably the big ones that we need to talk about is the ECA is fully in place in both houses, which is a positive thing. Any amendments that would delete that, we'd definitely be opposed in. There are several bills out there that deal with charter schools and vouchers. As you go through those, don't be misled by the titles of those. For example, I think our district is very clear on parental rights, but the 117 that deals with parental rights tips the boat. It allows parents to sue the district for not communicating appropriately about gender identity. It's a no-win for school districts. Not only does it open the way for lawsuits, it requires us that we pay for the hearing officer, and then the legislation is very clear, they can sue for damages. It puts the district in a position that we would be chasing paperwork forever. Because right now, the hearing officer process in terms of teachers is so lengthy, it's 7 to 9 months out. So you're not going to get answers to any of these questions, and the district has to pay for that hearing officer. There's no skin in the game of parents who want to sue the district. It's all on us. 117, I don't think will move forward, but it's a little scary. Again, I had a lengthy discussion on these, but I'm not going to do that. Need to be cautious about Senate File 155. Again, it looks good. It's about education and teacher resources. What it does is it takes away the block grant from school districts. We are forced to use the funds identified for teachers for the number of teachers the model provides. In other words, the block grant is pulled apart, local control goes out the window. What we potentially lose is we would lose counselors, elementary counselors, because they're not in the model. We would lose our nurses because they're not in the model. We'd lose funding for our SROs because that's not in the model. And every other position that our district determines is important for an instructional program, we would lose because we lose the block grant. The other fallacy to that is it identifies the number of teachers you should have, K-3, 4, 5, but it only calculates their salary based on a figure much less than we already pay. So we'd have to hire teachers, more teachers, at a rate that they're not going to compensate us for, because we're not going to hire teachers less than we pay our teachers now. And also, we don't have room for all those classroom teachers. And even in our declining enrollments, we've faced that. So that's really scary to me. The only other one is Senate File 158. It looks like our retirement costs will go up. They're going to add 1% across the board, 0.05 for employees, 0.05 for employers. Maybe not a bad thing, but horrible timing, I think, to do that. And we've only been 1 year out of the last raises. I can tell you that I'm really, I'll say pleased and supportive of our representatives. Senator Schuler's doing a great job. Representative Berger, exceptional. They've communicated frequently. I actually sent out Representative Berger's communication, I think, yesterday. And they're doing a good job. They're on the right side of these issues, and our hats off to them. John Williams is not here. He actually went to the forum. He has his business meetings down there, so he met with both representatives, took them to dinner, and again, we'll have more of an update next week. But I think tomorrow is the last day for third reading, so the list should clear. And that's good news, I think. But anyway, that's an update.
Okay, thank you.
I know you probably just heard blah, 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 but that's the update.
So, where'd Jaron go?
Right there. Right here. I got it.
Mr.
You pushed a button you weren't supposed to push?
Well, they go away. It went away.
It just
Mr.
died.
Chairman, we did
Go ahead.
miss administrative contracts.
Oh,
The two
sorry,
new ones,
yes.
too.
Oh, good, yeah.
No, we didn't.
Okay, so the
Let's go
update,
next, Brian.
the information on that, you have a list of administrative contracts that will be approved next month.
Okay, all right.
Now we're done.
I did miss that, so. Legislative update.
He kind of did that, or did he?
No, he talked about that, so we're on the EHS dome, so I need Jaron's attention here, so.
Now, that's me.
Oh, you are,
Yes.
okay, so.
Chairman Peterson, trustees, just kind of an update in our thought process with the domes. We are moving forward. We are working with what exactly we told you about. One of the questions, the best questions out there is how we're going to pay for it. I had John look into borrowing the money that we've talked about. And again, as I see this, is spending now $1.4 million to the budget, to our carryover, may concern you, may concern our community. Borrowing the money, $1.4 million, will cost us around $180,000, $190,000 a year for the next 10 years. Our ability in the budget to line item $190,000 for the next 10 years is cake. Can be done. Doesn't spend down our carryover. It makes it a commitment with this community for the next 10 years. And the idea of this facility for our students at $190,000 a year is a no-brainer, I believe. I have, and we will move forward with a public forum, and I need to get a decision from the board. Do you want to do that in February, or you want to do it in March? If we do it in February, it will allow us a little more time in terms of public comment after the hearing. If we do it in March, it'll give us more time to actually be able to present something in terms of where we are with bids, forecasts, all that. So I guess pros
Do we
and
need
cons
more
of it.
time to get that information?
Jared, would you have more time to get information about the domes, or more time for the public to comment? Are you okay to do this in, I think it's February 28th?
At this point, we're ready to do the public hearing. I think we've got enough information to be able to present to the public what it is that we're wanting to accomplish with the domes. We kind of know pretty well where the pricing is. We can show you, last time we showed you pricing with 1 and 2. We've also done some pricing with 3, recognizing that, you're going to be on a totally different site, and so that pricing becomes a little bit different. With what John's put together, we've got kind of the cost analysis, the pros and cons, and can show you that actually, in a unique way, really, how within 8 years, there's a cost benefit, which in education is kind of hard to track and pinpoint, but John's done a great job of that. So I think we've got enough information to be able to share with our constituents kind of where things are at. We've got ways to be able to finance it, so my recommendation would be able
If
to...
you're ready by February, I think we should do it in February.
Does this require a motion? Does this require an act of the board?
No, it's a forum.
Just a commitment that we'll get quorum.
Yeah, it's just.
So that's the 28th.
The 28th, so there's no motion that needs to be carried on this. We don't have to have a quorum there for this thing. It'd be nice to have everybody there, but.
It'll be considered a special board meeting, so we do need a quorum.
Oh, okay. So we don't need to move on it if it's a special board meeting?
No.
Okay, all right.
I will not be there.
On the 28th?
28th.
Okay, all right.
I am fully supportive of having it that day, but I won't be able to attend.
Okay. What time are we looking at?
I'd say 6, so we don't confuse anybody.
6 o'clock on the 28th?
Just encourage people to be there.
Any comments from the board at all?
I can be there.
Okay, and let people know, so we can have good conversations
We'll
about
put
it.
it in the paper, put it on our website. Hopefully we'll get our sports teams and other activities to communicate with the parents to come and either express their concerns. It'll be a short presentation of what we're talking about, and then as part of that presentation will be the funding options. The board will not take action. It's not that kind of meeting. Then we'll have roughly, about a 45-day comment period that sits within WAPA, or less. Decisions will probably have to be made in April.
Yeah, if we want this done by next fall, so move forward with it. One thing I would request, and I don't know if we can approach Rocco and Dan Wheeler as far as economic benefits to putting these in our community, and if we have them at our forum to be able to reach out and talk to people about bringing people in, that we have those individuals here as well, so.
It's a great idea. With John and his cost analysis, it is hard to put a dollar value on a space.
Oh, yeah.
It's more of a value to our community than it is to us. But there is a dollar value in terms of a teaching space. We create 2, actually 4 if you split them in half. And John convinced himself. His work convinced him that it can be done.
Okay. So that was just be one thing, is if we could get Little O'Neill there.
Okay, we'll try to do that.
And I think he would be there. And then just give him a heads up on it. And then
Okay,
he
we will.
maybe look so. Anyway. Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. So, we are done with the dome update now. Public comments, we're moving on to, do we have any public comments out there? I see some social study people and PE people, and
They have no comments.
they have no comments.
None from the social studies.
Nothing from the social studies department in the back there.
And the PE
What about
department's
the PE
ignoring us.
department?
Build the dome.
Power to the dome, so, all right.
Supposed to have done that in '85.
Yeah, long time ago. That was a little different dome.
I know.
So,
I
a
know.
little late. So if there is no public comments, we'll move on to our action items. Mr. Thomas, personnel.
Yes, Krista.
Hey, sorry, I've been watching on YouTube because you could hear it so much better, so I'm just a little bit delayed. But I can be there on the 28th, and I'm going to log off now because the rest of the family is getting ready to leave for dinner, so.
Enjoy Maui.
All right, thank you.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Thanks, Krista.
Thank you.
Can you imagine sitting there that long?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I could have sitting at the beach, watching it. Yeah, rough.
Yep.
Dedication.
Board members, we have one resignation. I recommend that you approve that resignation. We had a leave of absence. She decided not to return.
Okay, all right. So I need a motion to approve the resignation as previously discussed from of leave of absence. Do I have a motion to approve that?
So moved.
I'll second it.
You got both of those? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay. Here, buddy. It's getting late.
1, 2, 3. You're on record. I got 6 yeas and 1 nay. Not that it's going to matter, but anyway, I got 1 nay.
Why not?
So she has to stay working here,
That's right.
whoever the individual is, so. All right. So next action item is I need to approve the district calendar for the 23-24 and tentatively the 24-25 school years.
I recommend as you approve.
Okay, thank you.
Second.
Got a first and a second motion, we've got both of them. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm good.
Okay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Next on there, we need to have a motion to approve the Region 5 BOCES lease agreement.
Can we move before you speak? Just kidding. Just kidding, I'm just kidding.
I'm just up here if there's any questions.
What's the bottom line on the agreement? Easy. What's 1,800 a month?
Yeah, about 1,800 a month.
For what space? That kind of.
It's the Curlin building, yeah. For our new board members, it's 2/3 of the Curlin building.
Had they been doing it for you?
They've been doing that now, this is their 5th year.
Oh, that's right, they have, excuse me.
So, Hayden
I know what
Peak.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
My only question, is there any significant change to this lease from what we've approved in the past?
Nothing.
Then I move that we approve the lease.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh, sorry. David, so.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, I need a motion to approve the first reading of the JECBA admission of exchange students. Mr. Thomas, do you have some comments on
Yes.
that?
Board members, you can see up here, this is our policy, JECBA. We allow exchange students. Part of that allowing exchange students is they have to be approved by the board, the companies that allow them. These two, SETA USA and EF High School Exchange, have approached us, provide us the necessary documents, including liability. Some on that list probably don't exist anymore, but again, we don't go after it. Talking to the high school, They're trying to decide what's an acceptable number. We used to allow 9. 9 exchange students at the high school is too many. So I set it at 5. I was hoping they'd touch base with me. They didn't know 5 or 6, but right now it's at 5. My recommendation to you is approve this at first reading. It'll come back next month for final approval.
Okay, and then I did notice that through the application process, it did include middle school and high school, but we clearly defined that it is 16 to 19 years old
Yes.
as far as the exchange students that we will take.
Yes.
Okay, so,
Okay.
all right. Do I have a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman.
We need to clarify, it's not approving the students, it's approving the companies that...
Yes.
Yes, yep, so...
It's just approving the first reading of the policy.
Yes,
Mr.
so-
Chairman, I move that we approve the first reading of the admission of exchange students.
Do I have a second? I have a first and I have a second.
Yeah.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion passes.
So should I just move that we table the water rights again?
I did ask specifically what to say tonight, I did. The impact studies are still going on, and we will know more later.
Okay, so do I have a motion to table the Red Devil Ranch water rights
Again and
until
again.
March 7th?
Well, probably, Mr. Chairman, if you're okay, we'll just probably drop this off the list till we're approached again.
Okay, that sounds good to me. So do I need a motion to
Mr.
not
Chairman, I
approve
move
that?
that
or-
we table this matter indefinitely.
Okay.
Do you want to just table it until they have a meeting?
That's what, indefinitely until we hear further. So our
Okay,
motion is to...
so Mike calls the meeting, I'll let you know.
Okay.
We're
that
just
was-
tabling it every single meeting, so let's take it off the list.
Yes, so
Until something
Indefinitely, it's
happens.
off.
indefinitely is off until we hear further. Okay. All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. I have a motion and a second to indefinitely suspend the water rights discussion for the Red Devil Ranch. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion passes. Next topic. So Jenny has decided that she wants to leave the board, and so
The rec board.
The rec board. I guess you're done. I don't think I have that authority.
For the sake of brevity, I move that Brian Woodward take over the position, be appointed to the rec board.
That
I
sounds
second that.
wonderful. We've got a first and a second. So there is a motion for Brian Woodward
And
to...
Brian's motioning Brian?
Brian is motioning Brian to sit on the BOCES board.
No, rec board.
Rec board.
Did I say? I said
You said
BOCES.
BOCES.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's late.
Now you're trying to
I know,
release
I'm
me
Dave.
and put him
Dave
on the
Jr.
BOCES
I
board.
know, I'm starting.
I know. So on the rec board, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Motion passes. Fantastic. Now we move on to our round table.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that everyone who presented tonight understands how much we appreciate the amount of work that you do for this school district. It is absolutely phenomenal, and I don't know if we could really convey how impressed and appreciative we are.
No, yeah, I
I
second
marvel
that.
at the amount of work that they have done as it relates to this.
Absolutely.
So please don't take any of the stuff that I kind of say personally, and don't get defensive. I do sometimes question things, and I hopefully you understand that's my makeup and my
Your
nature.
house is safe, toilet paper is expensive.
Yeah, and eggs. Eggs. No baby in my house. That's why I'm behaving the way I am. So, one thing I do, and it's kind of been out there a little bit, I can't say enough about Miss Gardner, Diane Gardner. What a wonderful woman, and can't say enough about what she's done for this community, and known her for a long time, and her family, went to school together. Star Valley kind of grew up together a little bit with her and her family. But her heart has always been in the right place, and she's always put her kids first. And I just want to publicly let everybody know how much our prayers and thoughts are with her at this time. So Here,
Yeah, I agree. And then just real quickly, I spoke with a law enforcement officer today, and he talked about possibly wanting to get the DARE program started again in the middle schools. I think with a lot of the issues that we're having with drugs and alcohol and vaping, I think it's time we look at reinstating that. Not only is it a good program as far as the drugs and alcohol are concerned, but it gets the officers in the schools and getting the students to get to know the officers, which I think has a huge impact on all of that. So I'd like to put that into the discussion sometime if we want some of these officers to come and present, whatever.
I can explain, Trustee Welling. The DARE program went away not because we didn't think it was valued or important. It went away because of funding.
Okay.
Title did not allow us to use title funds for DARE because it's not research-based or best practice. Even at the time, we thought that was a little unfair, but that was why DARE went away.
Okay.
If we can continue it, it is a funding issue, and we can't use grant funds. Is that still the case?
That's correct.
So it's not that we didn't, I loved it. It's just federal funds and the control of those. So I would encourage the police officers to put a kind of a bid together and let us know what kind of expense we're talking about.
Okay. I mean, he did talk about, the sheriff's department and the PD working together, maybe to split the middle schools. One, the PD would do one and the sheriff's department would do the other, or whatever. But I do think it's a good program, a worthwhile one that if we could swing it, it would be really good to get it back in the schools.
Okay, so I guess, are you going to pursue that, or are we going to pursue that with the police department on the DARE side? And they're off duty, right, when they come in? Or are they on duty?
Is there someone in particular?
They are on duty.
I'm trying to think who's in charge. I spoke with Kirby Lamb today. He mentioned some of the officers that had done it in the past, but they have several officers that are doing it right now. We travel to the valley, and they do it in the schools over in the valley. So, I mean, I could talk to him and see what officers are in charge of that.
And we'll just see if they'd like to pursue it and what it would take.
They talked about it in the commissioners' meeting today, and so he brought it to my attention at the clerk's office.
ARP funds.
We've met with the police, we just met with them 3 weeks ago.
3 weeks, yeah.
And talked about different ways to collaborate, so.
We have a
focus that is getting them in schools.
We do have a good working relationship with our local PD. The Sheriff's Department has always been supportive. It's typically DARE has been a sheriff department's program. Again, with what we're seeing with vaping in our schools and in our community, it'd be one pretty strong message, I think, from them.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So we'll move forward with that, and then maybe have a discussion next month.
Okay.
Find out a little bit more about that, so. With that, I need a motion
Mr.
to
Chairman,
continue
I
our
move that we
meeting.
adjourn.
Second.
I need a motion to adjourn.
Okay, you got it.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
All good.
Never.
Thank you very much.
I know.